It is now 6:15, so we'll start it up.
Yay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Brattleboro Select Board meeting. John, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, Ian, it was.
Thank you very much. All right. In that case, now that we've convened the meeting, I'll look for an approval of the minutes from October 3rd of 2023.
I'll move to approve those minutes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Peter, you've got a motion to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion on those minutes, Ford?
I did not find any typos.
No typos this time. All right. And I'll look to the public, and I don't see any members of the public. So in that case, board, all those in favor of approving the minutes of October 3rd, 2023 indicate with an aye. Aye. That's going to carry 4-0. All right, we're going to move on to chair remarks. And I have just one remark. I wanted to, seeing Mr. DeGray in the room, thank him immensely for all of his years of service to the town of Brattleboro. I think the first time I came to Brattleboro, I was struck by the flowers, and I've never not been struck by the flowers for all the years that I've lived here and the years before that I visited. So I'm sorry to see that you're done doing that service because you've been doing such a great job. But Brattleboro has been so beautiful for so many years because of the work that you've done. So thank you so much. And that concludes my remarks. So I will pass it over to John for manager's comments.
Thanks, Ian. So a few things tonight. The ice is getting close, and the Nelson Withington skating facility will be opening for the season this Saturday, October 21st. The Gibson Aiken Center will be opening for after-school and evening programs for youth and adults next Monday, October 23rd. The Recreation and Parks Department is excited about teaming up with the DBA for the annual Halloween celebration Brattleboro on Halloween night, Tuesday, October 31st. There will be trick-or-treating in the downtown from 5 to 7 p.m. The Horribles Parade will begin at 6 p.m. at the Brattleboro Co-op and will proceed up Main Street to the Gibson Aiken Center. The parade will be led by the Brattleboro High School Band. And following the parade, there will be trunk or treat offered behind Gibson Aiken until 7 p.m. Additionally, on Halloween, there will be the Retreat Farms Goats in Costume at Pliny Park and a photo booth set up at Insight Photography.
Whoa.
So pretty big evening on Halloween.
Huge.
The annual Phil and Mary Dunham ski, skate, and snowboard sale is scheduled for Friday, November 3rd, Saturday, November 4th, and Monday, November 6th at the Gibson Aiken Center, 207 Main Street. So check that out if you need skis, skates, or snowboards. The Human Services Committee will hold their annual question and answer session for prospective applicants for human services funding tomorrow. That's Wednesday, October 18th at 4:30 p.m. here in the Select Board meeting room and also over Zoom. I was asked to express appreciation tonight for a group of Washington Street residents who recently got together with DPW staff to clean up an abandoned campsite in that neighborhood. Together, they did a great job and got everything cleaned up. Just prior to tonight's Select Board meeting, the second of two public forums was held at the library to collect community input on the Greater Brattleboro Food Farm System Assessment, which is expected to be completed and presented to the board by December. Finally, the LED lighting upgrade that I mentioned at your last meeting of 6 town buildings is proceeding ahead of schedule. So that is all for this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, John. We'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the Select Board comments and committee reports. Board members, Liz.
I had a chance to view this Strong Towns video that was prepared by Strong Towns Association after awarding Brattleboro their Strong Town Award. And it's a really great little video. It has an interesting planning perspective about an urban town with a rural character, and everyone should see it. It's fabulous.
Great. Thank you very much, Liz.
Is that available on the internet somewhere?
Why, yes, it is. I'm sure that our town communications person has it available.
It is, there is a link on the town web page. So if you go to brattleboro.org, you can find the link to that there.
Thank you.
And it won't look that way very much longer.
No, a few more weeks. Yeah.
Few more weeks.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Other board comments, committee reports? Franz.
Thank you, Ian. A couple of really fun things that you can do in Brattleboro. One is I went on a walking tour of Main Street and environs, offered by the Brattleboro Sunrise Rotary with two erudite and, what's the right word? Good looking, I can't remember, guys, which were Sandy Shriver and John Seacrest were the tour guides. And they spent, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half parading us around and telling us really interesting things about Brattleboro history. You can sign up for this tour on TripAdvisor under Guided Brattleboro History Walking Tour, and I believe the next one will be on Friday, October 27th. And it was really interesting, very fun, and I highly recommend people participating in that. I think you'll really enjoy it. The other fun thing you can do is come and talk to me at office hours, which are Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30 and Monday from 8 to 10 in the morning at the Works Cafe on Main Street. Just bring your concerns about anything going on in town, and we'll have a conversation. So that's fun, too. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Tell them about your sign. You have a sign.
The sign. There's a sign that you'll see when you get there. That's how you know it's me. It says Franz.
Thank you very much, Franz. And I have to also agree, I've done the walking tour. I did it a couple weeks ago, and it was great. So, yeah, fully agree. I would encourage people to sign up for it, especially while the weather is nice.
No, I'm good.
Great. In that case, thank you very much, Board. We're going to move on to Agenda Item 6, which is public participation. This is an opportunity for a member of the public to speak on an item that is not on the regularly warrant agenda, or to request an item on the consent agenda be pulled and considered at the end of the regularly warrant agenda. So I will look to the public first in the room, and I don't see any hands in the room, and I will look to the public in Zoom, and I don't see any hands in Zoom. So we're going to move on to Agenda Item 7, which is the consent agenda. John, can you give us a quick update on our quick review of the three items?
Yep, there are 3 items on consent tonight. If the board approves the consent agenda, it will be approving the town to sponsor a Consortium Vermont Municipal Planning Grant application with Bellows Falls and Wilmington for a Wyndham Regional Cultural Plan. It will be authorizing a contract with Dufresne Group Consulting Engineers in the amount of $56,000 to design a secondary water tank at the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facility. This work was negotiated rather than competitively bid because it relates to other work that Dufresne is doing there on the water system. And finally, the board will be approving a temporary suspension of parking fees in support of the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce Holidays event on December 1st and December 2nd at a cost of approximately $3,500 in uncollected revenues.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. Board members, anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I consider a motion.
I will move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Are you, okay, so totally fine to come now. Dick,
You ask if there's someone in the audience?
so totally fine for this time. Next time, we don't take public participation on the consent agenda item. We ask for it at the public participation section. But if you are asking to pull an item now,
Normally you ask if there's somebody in the audience. That's what your practice has been. If someone wants to pull an item from consent, then that's why I waited.
yeah.
So you did not ask that. I think I think Fish was going to make a motion. I would ask you to pull the free parking from the consent agenda.
Great, thank you very much, Dick. All right, board, there's, anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Franz?
Yes, as requested by Mr. DeGray, let's pull the holidays parking item from consent agenda.
Okay. That just happens. There's no motion for that. So in that case, can I get unless there's anyone else that wishes to pull another item from the consent agenda, can I get a motion?
Hello?
Liz?
Yes.
I moved, I moved to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Excellent. Liz made a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in,
So something I'm not clear on is that motion having been made, we could now discuss
Agreed.
the consent agenda.
just sort of the items and whether we wanted to,
Okay, I just, it was a process
Okay.
question. But
yeah. Per our rules, we don't have a vote on pulling an item that we just allow to occur because all it's doing is basically allowing for additional discussion on an item that we would vote on anyway, so we don't want to waste a bunch of time on it. And so we could always amend our rules to do this differently, but right now, that's how we do it. So.
Well, for example, I will just pull an example out of thin air. Supposing somebody wanted to say in the consent agenda, something like, this consortium on cultural events reminds that person how awesome the literary festival was this past weekend. And that somebody just wanted to say, wow, if we could do more things like that, it would be such a boon for our communities in the Wyndham region. So I'm really excited about this municipal planning grant application. Would that be appropriate?
I think actually it would be probably more appropriate to either request to pull the item and then discuss it, or to talk about it in your remarks at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, well then I'm not going to talk about how terrific the literary festival was and how we really owe congratulations to the people who made that happen.
Fair enough.
Good point.
Okay, so we've got a motion pending, board. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, once strictly just trying to understand this.
Yes.
Can we request that something be put back on the consent agenda?
You could vote the consent agenda motion down. That's an interesting one. We haven't had that before.
That's what I'm here for.
Yes, so I think that I think that the goal of the consent agenda is for it to not really be contentious. And so the idea was pulling items was not a sort of contentious move. It was just to allow for additional discussion on the
Right.
item. I think that if you didn't like that the consent agenda there was an item pulled from it, you could vote against it. You could speak to, but actually this would be an appropriate thing to talk about. If you don't like how the agenda motion is now, then you could speak to that, encourage the board to vote it down, and then you could make a new motion that was just to approve the consent agenda as
Well, it's tough to pull something without explanation, right? So, but I understand pulling it will probably draw up the explanation
at the
deep into the night. So I think and I'm just a small issue with the holidays, holiday nights, that has always just been as traditional as the event itself, that nobody pays for parking. I would urge this board not to pass the amended agenda.
Okay, great. Any other discussion?
So then what happens if
I'm
you
not
don't pass the amended agenda? Does it
understanding.
go back to the original?
Yeah, I think that
New motion.
I think we need a new motion.
I see.
Or we could say none of the items are going to be on the consent agenda and we'll just consider them all at the end.
Oh, let's not do that.
Yeah, so I think those would be the two options. So I'm enjoying this process, discussion, and intrigue so early in the meeting.
Who's our parliamentarian?
Any other discussion on the
Not
amended
me.
motion? Okay, in that case, so
I'm a little unclear as to what
Let's restate the
Fish is
motion.
up to.
he's just requesting that you vote against the amended motion to pull the item from the consent agenda. Also, we probably wasted enough time just talking
Why?
about this. We probably could have just discussed
Yeah.
the item. So
I don't
let's just have the
understand
motion.
your reasoning.
So
My reasoning is that it's just always something that we have done for downtown merchants, I guess,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
allow.
yeah.
So I'm not, and not knowing why the agenda was pulled puts me in this precarious spot that I just don't want to.
Franz can speak to it. He's the one who pulled it.
Okay.
Why did I?
Yes.
Because I think if there's a member of the community who wants to speak against the idea that we have free parking, that you should have the opportunity to do that.
All right.
That's
So
why.
that did not answer. That answered. Franz is bolstering up that, but so not understanding why.
And I guess that would be an argument to approve the consent agenda as amended so that the item could be discussed to hear why the member of the community wanted to have the item pulled.
So it's not eliminating it, it's just.
No, I
moving it,
understand that
discussing it.
altogether.
Yeah.
I'm not completely new here, but okay.
Okay. So, okay, board. So we've got a motion pending to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hey. So we've got a,
that,
it's going to
democracy.
carry 3-1.
Democracy.
And this is a first for me on the Brattleboro Select Board to have a divided vote on the consent agenda. So, great.
Again,
It's kind of
that's what I'm here for.
May there not be many
Great.
more.
Yes.
the lack of consent agenda.
Lack of consent agenda. Okay, so we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8A, which is the Charter Review Commission. So all three, yes. So I'm going to invite the members of the Charter Review Commission who are present to come on up to the side table here. And Maya, I understand that you're going to have maybe some other people joining. And if that's the case, when they come in, you can just have them come on up.
Yeah, I told people you usually run late, which has been my experience.
Well, we were working towards running late by that discussion on consent agenda, but unfortunately, we're still on time, I guess. So I want to welcome Maya Hasagawa and the other members of the Charter Review Commission to the Brattleboro Select Board. And I understand that you presented us with a memo, and I want to pass it over to Maya first to introduce herself and members of her committee and speak a little bit to the memo.
I'm Maya Hasagawa. I'm the vice chair of the Charter Revision Commission. And Kate O'Connor, who is our chair, was not able to be here tonight. So I'm pinch hitting for her. And I'll ask people to.
Yes, I am Joy Trudeau, and I am also on the commission.
I'm Hannah Clarice. I'm also on the commission.
And we have some other people who should be come straggling in, maybe. We'll see. So we were appointed in December 22, and we've met 6 times. And so far, we have done a line-by-line review of the current charter. We worked with Bob Fisher, the town attorney, to do that. I believe that took a couple meetings. And over the summer, Kate O'Connor and I reviewed the work of previous commissions. That was 1980, 1996, and 2011. And if anybody in the public is interested, the summary documents of what we found are on the town website on the commission page. And I think that'll be easier to find in a few weeks, whenever the new website comes online. Is that right, Patrick?
Yeah, I would, if my recollection is that's like the second week in November. Is that? It's coming soon.
But the commission does have a page, and it's under other boards and commissions if anybody is trying to find it. We last meeting in September, we heard a report from department heads. And Ian and Franz were there. And I have to say the staff did a really good job. I mean, they went through the charter with a fine-tooth comb and really pointed out a lot of things that I don't think we thought of before. So that's kind of where we are right now. Our next meeting is on October 26th here in the Selectboard room. We meet at 6:15. And the main business will be to review the staff comments. And our goal is to kind of arrange them into topics that we can have specific meetings on each topic. Some of them may take more than one meeting, some of them may take half a meeting, but we want to have each topic announced in advance, and then so members of the public will know what we're going to be talking about. So the October meeting is basically going to be another work session. I guess you could characterize it. On our November 16th meeting is going to be a discussion of town committees. You know, what are they? Should they still be in the charter? Do they have the right number of members? How they're appointed? Because we have some that are appointed by the representative town meeting, and some of them are appointed by the select board. So that will be November 16th. And all the meetings are on Zoom. And so we want a lot of public participation. That was one thing that we found that was a problem with previous commissions, is there wasn't really a lot of public participation. The committee kind of rewrote the charter on their own. So I don't know whether Joy or Hannah have anything they want to add, anything they want to say about the commission?
No.
No?
Good summary.
Okay.
Great.
So, questions?
Yeah, Maya, thank you very much for the presentation. And just to give a little bit more context, because I realize that, you know, the board is aware of what you're doing because we appointed you and you all are aware, but we have members of the public who may have never even heard of the Charter Review Commission. So, we every 15 years per the Brattleboro Town Charter, we have a Charter Review Commission that's appointed to essentially go through and, maybe recommend changes, maybe not, and then it needs to be approved and it needs to be essentially made law by the legislature. And so we're in that process right now. We really appreciate Charter Review Commission coming to the Select Board to hear from us. So board members, I want to start with you all before we hear from the public. I think if there are things that you're interested in having Charter Review maybe devote a portion of a meeting to, or something that you're particularly interested in being reviewed, that may be an appropriate thing to discuss right now, so that they can take that feedback and talk to the rest of their committee about it. So I'll look to board members. Liz.
Thank you all for your service, and thank you for coming here. I thought it was interesting that the staff spoke to you about things that they, awkward pieces of the charter that they brought up, and I'd be interested in learning more about that. I don't need to hear that now. I'll just follow along. But other than that, I don't have any specific comments or concerns. So thank you again.
Other board members?
No, thank you.
Franz.
Thank you, Ian. Welcome. As I spoke a little bit at the meeting of your group that Ian and I attended. The thing that most attracted me to or signified the importance of the charter review at this time is I think where the town is headed with regard to representative town meeting. That, in the time that I've been involved with RTM, which is now going back, 30 years or so, maybe not quite, but a long time. And it's changed a lot. That, it used to be that you had to run for town meeting, and you had to do a little bit of work to get elected. And I didn't get elected when I first ran for town meeting. And those days don't seem to be with us anymore, in that every year we now are trying to scrape up people to a point at the last minute to participate, to fill out the full number of town meeting representatives. And the town meetings themselves have gotten a lot longer and just seem a little more difficult to manage than they were 25, 30 years ago. So I'm just wondering, is there some change, or is there something that we should do as a community to try to strengthen or beef up representative town meeting? So to me, that's the issue that I'm concerned about with regards to what you folks are up to. Also, it struck me as you were talking, Maya, that public participation, there's kind of a link there, RTM participation, Charter Review Commission participation, and I think an understanding of what's at stake would help engender the type of participation that you're looking for, and talking about maybe your own personal reasons. RTM is my reason, but maybe you guys have your own reasons for being on this commission, the things that you're looking at. Do we need to tweak this, or is there some fundamental problem with that, et cetera? Perhaps that would help spark interest in the community as a whole.
I know that Kate has talked about doing some kind of article for the Reformer and the Commons about the commission and its members. We hadn't gotten to the point where we'd put anything together yet, but it was something that we thought about doing. We're also trying to make sure that our meetings are actually noticed. I know that Joy is working on more publicity for the meetings, but you're right. I think people.
Peter, you can just join.
Straggler.
Bring a chair.
No worries.
If you believe it, they're running ahead of schedule.
I know. Well, I just learned my lesson. Come when you're told to come, not when you think it's going to happen.
You want to introduce yourself?
I would love to do that. I'm Peter Elwell. I'm a member of the Charter Review Commission.
Great. Welcome, Peter.
Sorry to be late.
And thank you, Franz.
Can I just grill them directly for a second?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, but you can go ahead first.
Well, just if any of you wanted to say just a few words of why you decided to join this commission, I think that might help people just see into the reasons that this is a significant effort, at least from your perspective. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but if you do, this would be an opportunity.
I sort of generally speaking, I think that our commission has a good balance of people that have been really actively involved in the community for a long time, and people like myself who are newer, both to Brattleboro and to municipal government. I joined in part just to be more involved. Brattleboro is a very civically minded community, and it felt inevitable that at some point I would get involved in something. And as someone with a legal background and strong writing skills, I thought that I could serve my community well in this position, but I don't have particularly strong feelings about RTM or anything else. And I think that that's maybe an important perspective as well, as people that have, very deep feelings about those things.
Yeah, Franz has sort of interrogated everyone of your commission, but you definitely don't have to answer him if you don't want to.
We never do.
Yeah.
My interrogation was, why are you doing this anyway?
Oh, is it my turn?
You'll at least introduce yourself.
Oh,
certainly.
I am Denise Glover.
Welcome, Denise. Oh, boy.
Sure. Here, Denise, let's go sit right with Peter. How are you? Good. How are you doing?
Welcome.
Welcome, thanks. I care about our town, and I like to know how things work, and I like to get in there and get my hands dirty. That's pretty much it.
Great.
I'm David Gardenstein. How are you all doing tonight?
Great.
Excellent. So I thought that I could be helpful on the Charter Revision Commission. I'm moderator of town meeting now, and I was chair of Selectboard before, so I have a pretty good idea about how the town government works, and thought it would be a useful perspective.
Absolutely.
I asked to join and was grateful to be appointed because of my love for Brattleboro and my municipal experience and the opportunity this presents to bring both into play. And I'd like to second the importance and value that we are finding in each other of the variety of backgrounds and perspectives that we bring to the effort. So far, it's been really, really satisfying.
Yeah, as a newer member of Brattleboro in general, and getting involved with other boards, I'm on the Parks and Rec board as well, and getting to know the town, it was also important for me to figure out how it works and what doesn't work. I'm very grateful for the partners on the commission, so kudos to the last select board that in December of 22 that put together a group.
And I applied to be a member because I've been active on a number of boards in town, and I'm also a member of RTM, and I've seen some things that worked really well and some things that didn't work so well, and so I thought I could bring that perspective to the charter.
Great. Thank you very much. Franz, did you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Great.
Thank you all.
So for myself, Maya, you spoke to one thing that I had noted that I wanted to ask of you, which was whether you're going to identify sort of specific issues and attach them to meetings warned in advance so that the public would kind of like know about something, maybe get excited about it, build a little bit of momentum to maybe help to get a little bit more public participation. It sounds like you're going to do that.
Yes. We noticed that previous commissions kind of, when they didn't publish their agendas in public, I mean, they had their agendas. Some of the commissions had agendas. Some of them had no agendas at all. They just met. And they talked about things kind of at random, I guess you might say. And so I think that's a decision that we made, that we should have subject-specific meetings. Maybe not every meeting, but most meetings. so that people will know what they can come and comment on and talk about.
Excellent. The second thing I had was kind of bouncing off of Franz. I hear a lot about RTM in many different ways, positive and negative. And so I think I would really encourage the commission to have maybe a couple, maybe at least 2 meetings on RTM and try to get some participation from current and previous RTM members. Sort of beyond RTM, more speaking generally about the charter, I feel like if you all review the charter and justify everything that's in it based on experience and input, and it's exactly the same, then that's a success, right? But it's been reviewed and you've really considered it. So I think RTM is one of the ones that I would probably put a little asterisk next to. Like, I think that one really needs to be given some real time and considered. And maybe it's the exact same way afterward, but I'll be really curious to watch those discussions and hear from people. And then finally, for me, the last one is I'd like to encourage the commission to have a meeting specifically about the select board. And you've got 2 previous select board chairs and 1 previous town manager. I'd really encourage you to discuss the number of members and the role of the chair of the board. So those are both in the charter. I'm not really giving any position on what I think about that, but I just think that they're worth discussing.
I have another comment.
Liz.
Seeing Peter, and thank you for coming, I was reminded that when you were appointed, you discussed the big picture of the charter and how the charter fits in with all the other towns in the state and their charters. And you would highlight some maybe innovations that we may or may not wish to consider. And I assume that at some point there'll be a meeting to discuss that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's actually a subset of us, less than a quorum, that are going to be working together on that deep dive into other charters to see what we might propose to bring here.
Thank you.
Other board members before I turn it over to the public? No? Okay, so I've got a hand in the room. Dick, if you want to come on up.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro, and thank you for volunteering to serve. I was part of the last charter review as a board member and going through the meeting before it got sent up to Montpelier for approval. And it is a long and cumbersome process, so thank you. A couple things for me. First of all, I want to dovetail on Franz's comment about the size of RTM. And I do remember when there was multiple people over the number of spots that were trying to become a RTM member. Today, we're lucky if we're getting to 50% of the 15 people that we elect from every district each year. And I think we have to take a hard look at that. And from what I'm seeing of someone who's been involved for a long time, is that there's a heavy recruitment process. And so we're recruiting people of like-minded thought. And that's not good for RTM. It's not good for the town. And if I go out and get 10 people who think like I am, I've got 10 votes. And I think we have to really look at that and say, that's not a good process for the town. I also believe that if we reduce the number, I don't think it's going to hurt RTM. I think more and more people are going to RTM with a personal agenda than they are looking out and being a delegate for the district that they represent and the town as a whole. There actually should be language in there, I believe, that each district should have a couple of meetings a year other than town meeting. And so there's a public forum so they can invite people in their district to come and talk to them, maybe sometime in February or January, probably February, because we're going to pretty much know what the agenda is going to be at town meeting, so we can get their thoughts. That doesn't happen. So you're going to town meeting, and you may talk to a couple of people, but we need to give everybody the opportunity to talk to you. If they don't come, shame on them. But there's nothing in the charter that says we should do this. As representatives, we should hold a caucus in our district. They don't do it on the same day, obviously. So I would hope that you would consider reducing the number and actually adding a meeting where the public can meet their representatives. Secondly, I've spoken to a couple of members of the committee. Presently, we don't have any language in our charter about the 1% rooms and meals tax or any other potential opportunities for us to implement a tax that the state might say, you can do this. And what happens here is that because we don't have this language in our charter, the state takes a vig out of the 1%. If this language was in our charter, like Burlington implements the 1% rooms and meals and sales tax up there, so they're getting the full 1%. The town is collecting it. The difference is for us right now, the state collects the money and then it kicks back 0.67%. If we had language in the charter and the town says, instead of giving the state 33 points, we can do it ourselves with our finance department. We're going to get more money in here. So I would actually like you to do that. And I like if somebody in the legislature goes, we should let the towns get 1% on cannabis sales. I can't believe that nobody jumped up and down and tried to push that through, because that would be a large sum of money for our community. So I'm looking for language in the charter that gives us the opportunity to implement the sales tax ourselves and keep the revenue here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dick. I don't see any.
Can we clarify some of that?
Well, wait, do we have a hand on the chart? No. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that Tim Wessel did jump up and down, and the cannabis 1% is part of the law only because we have the 1% sales tax.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. Any other comments? I don't see any other in Zoom. I don't see any other in the room. So I think my only other comment was if you want to come back to the select board again and speak on sort of progress, and if you want to get additional feedback, we'd be more than happy to have you and appreciate your show of force. And
we'll all come on time next time.
Yeah, and the board spoke a little bit before some of you got here, but we really appreciate you all being here.
Well, also an open invitation to join our public meetings.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there any other final comments from the board?
Not me.
No? Okay, in that case, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your work, and we wish you good luck moving forward. All right, so we're going to move on to agenda item new business 8B, which is the quarterly financial report, which I'm going to invite
Kim Frost,
Kim Frost
Finance
to
Director.
join us. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So I'm here to present the report. As you see, it's a quarterly report. It's something that we are looking to implement moving forward if, everybody is okay with that. We would like to start taking a look at our finances in a different way, more like at a policy level. Also, we have OpenGov, which is coming, and it's coming fast, and it's going to be here, and it's going to give us the flexibility to push reports out through the actual website that people will have information, this kind of information at their hands whenever they want it. We're not exactly there yet. We will be there soon. And And this just gives everybody the opportunity to be able to look at our finances, be completely transparent whenever they want. And then the purpose of this report is for us to kind of, come and tell you about maybe trends, maybe things that are, one-offs that happen, that affect our finances, something that we see that's coming down the pike. We're looking at our finances now in department head meeting. We're doing that on a monthly basis. So we as department heads are managing our budgets at a much different granular level. So while these are all new policies and procedures within, our departments and then looking at OpenGov coming down the pike, we feel that the quarterly report to the select board would be the better way to go. And there's always the option where if you don't like it, we can always go back to coming monthly. If everybody still wants that, it's not a problem.
Great.
So this is our first quarterly report. With 25% of the fiscal year complete, because we're 3 months in. We are tracking in the general fund, our expenditures are 21.2% of the annual budget. The utility fund, the expenditures are tracking 20% of the annual budget, and the parking fund expenditures are tracking at 16.6% of the budget. There's nothing that needs to be reported that's out of the ordinary. Things are moving along, smoothly. And then there are our regular reports that are included with their balances as of September 30th. So the loan report shows a balance of $4,138,590 in outstanding loans issued through our various loan programs. The fund balance report contains updated balances of all the town funds as of the date of 9/30, and the grant report contains information on 31 active grants and 5 in the application process.
Thank you very much, Kim, for your presentation. Board, let's get a motion to start this off. Did I catch you all sleeping?
No,
Liz.
you have to find it.
I move to accept the quarterly financial report as presented.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Liz. So sort of two elements to discuss in this quarterly financial report, both any questions that you have for Kim on specific things in the presentation, but then also generally speaking to a shift from a monthly financial report to the quarterly financial report if the board is inclined to move to that system based on what town staff are saying, or if you want to stick with the monthly. And I think the motion can be amended to reflect that if we want to move differently. So, Liz.
Thank you. Hi, Kim. I'm in favor of the quarterly, and I just wondered if you could give us an example of a trend that we could see better in the quarterly fashion than we have been tracking month to month.
I guess if all of a sudden, say on a specific expense, let's just say diesel fuel, right? So now all of a sudden gas prices are going up. Now we can see that the expense for diesel across our fleet is going up. We would be able to show that more on a quarterly report than on a monthly report. That could be something, as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other board members? Franz.
Well, I've got a few things to say.
Yep.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Franz.
So when I was talking with John yesterday, I went over some of my thoughts on this, and I'm not in any way against the quarterly report idea. I was thinking it would be nice to have a little bit more of a written narrative about what's, if it's been 3 months since we've heard the details of things, that maybe there would be things to, whether it's the trends that you've noticed or something else, but just, what are you thinking about our financial situation at that moment? And specifically with kind of highlights that are worth noting, and even more specifically, any red flags that have popped up. It would be really great to see that as part of the report. Also, in leafing through these many pages of numbers, I realized that there's quite a bit that I'm just not that familiar with. In particular, the funds and the grants and the loans, which are outlined. I mean, there's a lot of detail here, but I don't really know what all these different funds are. And that's come up, I think, before that. And just looking at the list of funds, it adds up to a fair amount of money, but I don't know what the limitations are or the capabilities are of these different pools of money, or, which ones can be used in what ways, et cetera. Or, some of them maybe there isn't any immediate use for them. I mean, fire truck fund, I kind of get that one. But VCDP first generation deferred, I'm not so sure about. So anyway, it'd be nice, maybe in conjunction with the OpenGov things coming online, if there were some, just brief, a sentence or two explanation of the funds. Some of the loans I noticed are in arrears, and it'd be nice to know more about that. And the grants, some of the grants, it's really clear what they do, and some of them are not. Anyway, this is, when it comes to the general fund, I think most of us are pretty comfortable with what's in there and why it's in there. But some of these other areas are less clear, and I'd appreciate more detail on that. But having said that, I think it's okay to try out the quarterly schedule, or cadence, as one might say, and see how it goes.
Great.
Thank you very much, Franz. Other board members? So I think unless you.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in the finances. This is where I stay really quiet.
Okay, fair enough. So I think for myself, I am in support of moving to quarterly. If a couple of things. One, I think I'd like it to see it a little bit more of a presentation. Maybe it's a way to show off OpenGov, which we spent a bunch of money on. I think it's an opportunity to have a deeper discussion about the financial health of the town, and that's something that isn't really happening in the monthly financial report discussion, which is okay. But I think that it would be more beneficial to the board and to the public to have a more robust quarterly discussion. And so if you feel like you have the capacity and you feel like that's something that can be accomplished in the quarterly report, then I'm super in support of that. I think the second thing is I'm in support of it if there is a fire, something bad happening in the financial health of the town, that I understand, and I think I do understand, that would come before the board for a quarterly report, right? I think a concern I could understand from both a member of the select board or a member of the public would be, we wouldn't really want to be sitting on something for 3 months that needed to be addressed sooner, and we didn't see it because we've been waiting 3 months to get the report. So if we feel confident that those things could come sooner, red flags, then the role of the quarterly report wouldn't really be to be addressing those specific things. It would be more giving a larger fiscal picture. So I just said a lot of things. I don't know if you feel like those are kind of accurately reflect what you see the report being, or?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said. Of course, if there is a red flag, we would bring that to the next meeting and make sure that you're aware of it. We would not make you wait 3 months. If we see something's trending in a certain way before the quarterly report, then that is something that we would definitely bring. You know, we're gearing up for more transparency and more of a conversation around policies and trends and our financial position and where that can go. Not just, you know, a budget status report.
Yeah.
So OpenGov will allow us to do that. You know, we're going to be learning all that software has and the potential that it can give us our information. So any suggestions are great, right? Because we're all going to be seeing it and learning it together. So I agree with everything that you said, and that is definitely, you know, my intent as we do these quarterly reports is to take suggestions and to move forward with them and to, you know, move the conversation at a higher level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think something that just comes to mind as listening is if we can also make sure that the way that the quarterly reports are reflected on the new website are really accessible and are kind of maybe if they can hold a similar format from quarterly report to quarterly report so that people can cross-reference and look back historically at them. I'm thinking this is more as if the board continues to like this moving forward, it'd be helpful for, you know, RTM. And I think it's like pretty tricky right now to take 12 months of monthly reports and sort of look at them and get a sense for a picture.
Right.
But maybe that'll be easier to do with quarterly ones.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great idea. And hopefully the ideas with OpenGov, you know, we'll be able to look real time at our expenses at any moment on the website. And that will hopefully be, you know, a goal.
Yeah.
So, but we could definitely do that with the quarterlies.
Yeah. Other board members, and I'll open it up to the public. All right. I don't see any hands in Zoom at the moment. Any hands in the room? See Dick? Yes.
I was the chair of the board when we started the monthly quarterly reports because we were having some financial issues. And that was my request, not that this is about me. But I can go along with this quarterly report. And if this is going to be on the webpage, is it going to be in real time? So when the numbers are changing, the numbers are also going to be changing on the webpage? Or is it only going to change every quarter when you do a new report?
So I think that there'll be two things, right? There'll be a quarterly report, which will be a static moment in time
Right.
that we will print out and bring to this meeting. I think that what you'll find on the website is that you'll be able to go into these reports at any moment in time and be able to see, from what I understand, and they showed us last week at our training session, is that when we enter something into accounts payable, it will move live into that budget book that everybody will be able to see online.
And if you see an anomaly in any department, are you going to notify John so John can notify the board that there's an anomaly right away? How is that going to happen? Rather, like dovetailing on what Ian said, instead of waiting for 3 months, if we have a huge expenditure from something that happens, it's going to throw that department's budget off a little bit. How is that going to get conveyed to the board? If it's actually you've just given your report and it's 2 weeks into the next quarter, how is that correspondence going to happen between the town manager, and the board?
Yeah, well, John and I are in constant contact daily.
Right.
If we saw something like that, I would absolutely bring it to John right away. If not right there, I mean, we can text each other, we talk to each other all the time, and he would convey that to the board, and then we would bring it to a select board meeting.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I do have a concern about that the board stays informed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think it's important. Not everybody's a numbers guy. I get that. All of you have different strengths on the board. but I do think it's still important to make sure that you peruse those numbers, and if something, and like Franz, he just asked a question about something he didn't understand. We don't get enough of that. We don't have enough people going, I don't understand that. Will you explain that to me? So I think that's good for the public to know and to understand. So I would agree with Franz also in getting definitions of what some of those funds are.
Yes, I consider myself a leader in not understanding things, Dick, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Dick. I don't see any other hands in Zoom, and I don't see any other hands in the room. So I think the one other thought I have from Dick's comment is I think it would be very helpful to have the board trained on OpenGov and how to use it, because one of the checks, and check is kind of a little bit of a strong word, one of the ways that this system will work well with a quarterly report is that the board will have the opportunity to be basically able to look at the budget or at the finances of the town in real time whenever they want to. But that tool is only as good as everyone's ability to actually use it. So I think a training for the select board would be really important when this gets underway. And then I also think it would be helpful for us to do a more broad, maybe like event at the library to show people all of the ways that they can access it from home and see how it works. And I don't think that needs to be a select board meeting, but something where we can. It's kind of two things. One, it justifies us spending money on something that I think is going to really help on transparency, and two, it lets people actually utilize this tool that is going to allow this to be a more transparent process.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea, Ian. And we could perhaps do it as a study session of the select board that's recorded and access, and could put a link up on the website.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Okay, great. Board, any other questions? In that case, we've got a motion to approve the financial report as presented. All those in favor? Aye. That's going to carry 4-0. Kim, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thanks,
Thank you.
This is where I say I'll see you in 3 months. No, probably see you sooner. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 8C, which is the Fire Department monthly report, including an EMS update. A little clunky on the agenda item name, but no worries. Welcome, Chief Howard and AC Kier. And I'll just start with, so this is our first monthly report from the Fire Department since the Select Board's decision to move forward with municipal EMS. In that meeting, after that decision was made, there was a sort of implementation discussion, and out of that discussion came a request from one board member, which was me, that we sort of shift the EMS update into EMS implementation and fire department update. And this is our first one of those. So the public who's been following along with this important issue will see that the report's a little bit different now. And I imagine that as we continue forward, that's going to change as the more information is available on EMS implementation. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all.
Good evening. Thank you. To start out, for the FY 23-24 budget so far, Golden Cross has billed out $257,247, and they've collected for revenue $213,397.60. To the EMS transition, since the 19th that you've folks approved us moving forward, we have ordered 3 ambulances. I'm happy to say one of them was delivered last week. The other 2 are in process of being built, and we should see them sometime in July. We have advertised for our 6 new positions that we got to add to the shifts. I'm happy to say that we've offered a conditional offer to 1 person so far to fill one of those positions. And we have 3 more coming in next week to take the written exam. And if they successfully pass that, they'll move on to the oral board portion of it. Also with that, we received, after I printed this, received 2 more applications for EMS superintendent position. So we got 10 applications in all. We had screening interviews last week, and we have invited 6 of those folks back on October 26th and November 9th to do an in-person oral board with those folks. And the oral board will be consisting of myself, Assistant Chief Keir, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland, Sally Nix, HR Director, Dr. Storn from the emergency room, and Taylor Emery from the emergency. She's a head nurse in the ER, and one of our paramedics, Kurt Schmidt, is going to sit on that board to interview these 6 folks. We are in the process of, we've begun the process of applying for our state transport license through Vermont EMS. Moving slowly with that, but we're on track and it's looking good. Of the funds that you've given us to purchase items, we've put a deposit down on 2 Type 1 ambulances of $69,510 for each of those, and we purchased the 1 Type 3 ambulance for $203,118.50 for a total of being spent so far of $342,138.50. And again, that'll be changing each month as we continue to move forward. I will now turn it over to Assistant Chief Keir, and he can talk to the run data on the first page of our report.
Thank you. So I regretfully have to inform you that data that you have on that page is inaccurate through a computer glitch, essentially. That data is not very accurate. But I would say the table that you see in green for FY 2023 is very accurate. That is up to date. The table on your right, FY 2024, that data is misleading. So I'm just going to run down through those numbers, and you can adjust them by paper. And I'm happy to send the correct data by email to any of you folks or any of the public that needs it as well.
Yeah, and let's have it amended. We'll keep this original one in the backup material, and then let's include an amended element to the backup material to have it reflected properly for the record.
Sure. So the total EMS calls is 834. The average time to scene is 4 minutes and 25 seconds. The 90th percentile time to scene an emergent response is 6 minutes and 54 seconds. The max time to scene is 29 minutes and 16 seconds, with a little side note on there that this was waiting on Brattleboro Police to secure the scene and make sure it was safe for a mental health patient. The average dispatch to clear is 25 minutes and 11 seconds. We transported 537 patients. 297 patients were non-transports. We had a need for 2 ambulances 159 times. The need for 3 ambulances was 15 times. Need for mutual aid was once. The need for mutual aid cover was 3 times. Need for mutual aid canceled 0 times. For the total call volume per month, in July we ran 269 EMS calls. August 303. September 262. So the way that we envision this chart to kind of continue to move forward is this is a summary of some of the information that we shared previously, mostly the stuff that you guys have questioned throughout the last year. The table on the left will remain the same. That will stay as the FY23, so you can do a comparison of one table to the other, being that we're 25% of the way through the year. You should be able to reference that and go from there.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your report. I'll open up to board members for questions or comments. Bronze.
Thank you. Welcome. Good to see you guys. So I had done a little calculation and, well, using the wrong numbers, I got the wrong answer.
Numbers, and I apologize.
But what I notice now is redoing my calculation, and this would only be something worrisome, I guess, if there were a trend or a consistent pattern.
but it's the percentage of non-transported individuals, which then has revenue implications because you can't charge for a no transport. So there's about an almost 10% increase in the percentage of non-transported patients if you compare the FY23 percentages to the first 3 months of FY24. So, I mean, it's just something I'll probably be keeping an eye on to see, is there a trend in our community of people calling an ambulance when they don't really need an ambulance? I mean, that's what's going on in my mind. The other thing I wanted to ask about is we're part of District 13. Is that right? And I guess I was looking at, there's a little bit late, but there's this statewide district by district consideration of the relationship between towns and regions in EMS. What do you know about that, or what have you heard about that, and are they going to come here? And I mean, we've kind of made our decision on that, but it just was interesting to see that this is really the subject of discussion at a statewide level, and I wonder where that's heading.
Sure. As you said, it's Vermont EMS that's doing this, and they've hired a third-party vendor to do this study for them, and they have chosen the places around the state to do the meetings. It's not our choice. They're choosing that, and the closest one for our area was Chester. Last week or the week before, an assistant chief here attended that meeting, and it was a very well attended meeting. Very good discussion back and forth from all parties that were there. So we certainly are staying in tune with it. If there's other meetings that come up that are in the area, we're going to be there attending it. We'll have a representative there representing Brattleboro.
Well, it would seem to me that in that meeting, Brattleboro would sort of be the hot topic of talking about regionalization or lack of regionalization in this part of the state. I'm just curious as to what went on, or just a brief summary of what people were talking about.
Sure, and it was a topic of conversation, the name of the study, Regional EMS. So they're really focusing on a number of different things that are happening throughout the Vermont region, not necessarily developing or implementing regional or exploring the regional model. We talked about things from dispatching issues throughout the state. We talked about mental health issues and the need for a greater need for EMS through some of those things. We talked about mutual aid and how other agencies are responding to and handling mutual aid. So there was 4 points that the vendor really wanted to get across. I wish I could articulate clearer those 4 points, but essentially they were looking at developing a report to push forward to the legislative body on what the needs for in the region of Vermont for EMS.
One of the things, Franz, that it's important to know, we're fortunate that we have a hospital in our town. I've spoken with an ambulance service that's in the White River Junction area, and some calls it takes him half hour to 45 minutes to get to the call, and then once they get to the call and transport the patient, it's anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour for them to get to a hospital. So that's the types of things that I think more or less this study's trying to help out with, is how can we help those areas that are having that long time to get on scene and that long transport time to the hospitals. How can we help them get better?
Yeah, I can see where they would be very interested in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Franz. Other board members? So for me, just want to touch base on the need for mutual aid cover. So in all of FY 22-23, we had 4 of those situations, and we have 3 already, and we're only 25% of the way through FY 23-24. So is that concerning? Do you want to speak a little bit to what the difference is between mutual aid cover versus mutual aid for the board and for the public? I'm certainly getting very versed in these terminologies, but I don't expect everybody to. So, if you want to just...
Mutual aid cover is if, right now we have 3 ambulances, and if we get 3 ambulances committed on 3 calls, we're being more proactive and saying, okay, let's start a cover ambulance. What's it gonna hurt to start a cover ambulance this way? And if one of our ambulances freezes up quick at the hospital, it's just a radio click to say, thank you, you can return.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is this weekend we had a second alarm fire and a first alarm fire. So we start a cover right in away for that same reason. So it's gonna vary, but we're certainly trying to be better and be more proactive about it.
Okay.
It's certainly easier to turn them around than it is to start them.
So the difference between mutual aid and mutual aid cover is that in mutual aid, you actually needed.
We needed them. We
mutual
set
aid.
them on a call. Correct.
Right,
That's
so
right.
they actually did something when they got
Yep.
here. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, Liz.
I had to, I want to have a discussion about non-ambulance, what was that, non-transport? Franz was saying, opening that discussion, but I seem to recall a point at which people would now have the freedom to not require an ambulance if it's their choice. And so that has a certain benefit as well, does it not?
Yeah, they have to be
Conscious.
in a mental capacity to be able to answer for themselves to say that. If they can't, then obviously we try to convince them to go, and if we can't get it that way, we try to get the PD to help us convince them to go. But it doesn't always help.
But there may be instances where transport is not required,
Right.
and that needs to be respected.
Mm-hmm. Like if we go to a motor vehicle accident and there's 4 people in a car, and they all, we check them out and they all refuse treatment, we have to file a report. It has to go in our report. It has to go to the state, so it's going to show up on here like 4 people didn't want, refused transport, so it's going to make that number go up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Other board members? And if not, I will turn it over to the public. Don't see any hands in Zoom, and I see a hand in the room. Oh, yeah.
A non-monetary question.
Oh.
Somebody get the defibrillator. That went over. So, looking at the list of EMS calls, and I'm going to use Franz as my shield. Could you give me a couple of examples of general illness and unknown medical? Because general illness is leading the pack, and so what would something like that consist of?
General illness could be somebody could say I have a fever and don't feel well. Somebody could say I think I have a UTI. It's kind of like a general overall. I have a headache. I don't feel good. I want to go to the hospital. If that makes sense. An unknown medical would be sometimes we get 911 calls that they say I need an ambulance, and they hang up, but the dispatcher can get the address from that 911 call, and they'll tone us out and say, hey, somebody just called from 1234 Main Street, said they needed an ambulance, and we don't know what their problem was.
And are these unknown medical more apt not to take a ride to the hospital? Where is the category of the higher numbers of untransported coming from?
It's a good question, Dick. Mental health, falls. As you can see, the fall is almost like 35%.
Yeah.
A lot of time we'll go there,
Just pick
evaluate
somebody
them,
up.
make sure they're not injured, do their vital signs and everything, and then they say, I just needed help getting up. I don't want to go to the hospital.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dick. And Bob Ozer. And I didn't mention it at the very beginning, but just moving for all the agenda items, just keep asking everyone to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Dick, you've been doing a good job. I just remembered that I forgot to mention that at the very beginning. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, thank you. Thank you for that. My question is, the way I understand the whole municipal EMS concept was that we need a sufficient force in the fire department to respond to fires. And then when they're not responding to fires, then they could be involved in EMS. But I noticed recently that an ad went out for new hires, and part of the ad was for single source or single use for paramedics. So they're not firefighters, they'd be paramedics. Is that a change in focus, or can you explain that?
Sure, I can
Great.
explain.
Thank you very much, Bob.
What we've talked about, and the union came to us as well, is potentially of the 3 to 6 new positions that we are going to hire, we're keeping that possibility of a one-time thing of hiring 3 of them just being sole paramedics to help us get our paramedic force up in numbers. It's just a one-time thing to help us get going. Obviously, once we get going, the goal in the budget is to send one of our people annually to a paramedic school to become a paramedic. And I'm happy to say that one of our folks started paramedic class last week. So, and next year hopefully I'll have somebody else come to me and say, I want to go to paramedic school, and we'll send that person off to paramedic school. But that's the main goal is, in the agreement between the town and the union, was to one time allow up to 3 single provider paramedics to work on staff.
Franz?
Yeah, I seem to recall, maybe I'm wrong, that then also people hired who were not firefighters would become firefighters once they were on staff. So it would be a relatively short time period until they could then start participating in fire calls as well.
That's true. Okay. It's certainly easier for us to train them to be firefighters than it is paramedics, because as you know, to become a paramedic, it's very time consuming and takes a lot of...
It would be easier to train me to be a paramedic than a firefighter.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for the question, Bob. I realized that I didn't have us make a motion, so of course I didn't do that correctly. So can I get a motion, board?
I will,
Peter.
motion to, we need to make an amendment to the numbers.
No, maybe as amended, to accept the as amended, yeah.
I'll motion to accept the fire department monthly report as amended.
Great, thank you very much, Peter. Any other questions there? Seeing none, there's been a motion made to accept the fire department monthly report as presented. All those in...
As amended.
As amended? Yep, all those in favor? Aye, that's going to carry 4-0. Thank you very much. Thank you both very much for coming and presenting, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to agenda item 8D, which is the process to develop state policy priorities. So I'm going to start this one off. Okay, board. So what we're going to be discussing tonight is exciting for a couple of reasons. I think first that since I've been on the select board, we haven't really had a discussion like this. And so I want to just take a minute to help frame what we're hoping to accomplish this evening. Over my 4 years on the board, and I think definitely over this last year, there's been a lot of conversations about areas in which maybe our municipal power is limited, or maybe it's outside of our scope on issues that are really impacting our community. And instead of sort of passively just sort of acknowledging that that's the case, we feel that it makes sense to engage our legislative delegation on some of these issues where we think that Montpelier could really be involved in helping the Select Board and the town of Brattleboro address some of the perceived issues in our community. So I think this sort of started with a meeting with the delegation, and I didn't really know the term delegation before starting this agenda item discussion a little while ago. So the delegation is basically referring to all of the representatives for Brattleboro and Brattleboro/Windham County. So that would be our 2 senators and our 3 reps. So having a conversation with the delegation about kind of this goal and understanding that a lot of the issues that Brattleboro perceives and that we're experiencing, that our delegation is working on a lot of them, right? And so these aren't these things aren't new to them, and we're going to. I'm getting ahead of myself, but we're going to hear from them on the 7th of November, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot of that repeated as well. That a lot of these things there's work in progress. But that said, we want to make some priorities from the municipal government side of what we really want to see happen on a legislative priority field. And the best way we thought to do that was to have sort of a list of perceived issues that town staff have generated, and to have the Select Board discuss a process in which we can synthesize down a couple of really important ones, and then work on language for how we want to vote on those priorities, and essentially hand them off to our representatives in Montpelier, and give it to them as a tool to use as they are, seeking resources and laws to help Brattleboro. So I'm going to turn it over to John in a moment, but just to be clear, there's the process that's being proposed for this evening is that we have some perceived issues that the municipal staff have generated. I think we want to make sure that we speak on any additional ones that aren't captured in here that you all have heard or you feel, and then also hearing from the public as well, and we can ensure that those are also captured in the list. And then from there, we would have a survey of the board, and we would come back on the 7th with basically some priorities already established on which ones we're thinking about. And in that 7th discussion with the delegation, we would have an opportunity to really nail down what those 5 to 7 priorities are. And they wouldn't have to be the ones that, we came into the meeting with, but at least that would help us to narrow our focus. Because right now, as you have all reviewed the backup material, there are a lot of things here, and they're all important. And I think we need to have some clarity and provide some specificity in what we're trying to tell our delegation to help us with in their legislative session that's coming up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John and have him correct me on anything I got wrong, and speak to the memorandum for a moment.
Yeah, no, I had just crossed out 2 pages of things I was going to say. So thank you, Ian. I expect that you've all read through the list of perceived problems that we've heard the most about. They start on page 55 of your backup materials and are grouped into 9 major categories: criminal justice, the drug addiction crisis, mental health, housing crisis, emergency response, grand list, transportation, school board, and home rule. So the question is, are there any problems in any of these categories that are missing, or maybe some other problems that fit under a whole new category? Since publishing this memo, we've had some feedback about some issues that were not listed. For example, high overdose rates is a problem. So, started to hear some things like that. We could add these suggestions that we've had feedback on, and plus anything else tonight, as Ian was saying, that you might want to have on the list for a survey to go out to the select board or not. So let us know what, if anything, to add, and whether you're okay with this overall general approach and process that Ian described and is in your memo.
So, board, Liz.
I just want to clarify that what we're doing tonight is essentially listening to the public, because you want select board input after we've heard all that and can digest and give our set of priorities to the town manager. Is that what we're doing?
I think that's essentially, I think there are two elements that I would just add. One is, I think that on the 7th, the public would also have an opportunity to, advise as to the priorities again, because all of these will be back before the board, but with a couple, 5 or 7 that are sort of like surface to the top. But if, members of the public felt like there are other ones that should be there instead, the meeting on the 7th would give that opportunity. And then the only other thing would be tonight, if you really don't like this process, this would be an opportunity for you to voice that and propose an alternative process.
Thank you.
Of course. Other board members?
I don't like this process.
Okay.
Well, actually, I do like this process, but I would add to it that I regard this as more of an ongoing discussion rather than a one-time thing. So that, I'm really looking forward to establishing a good back and forth discussion relationship with our legislative delegation. And that's something we should be paying attention to on an ongoing basis, not just this meeting and the next meeting. And I don't think you're surprised to hear that, and I hope everybody feels the same way, but I wanted to mention.
You mean you're not just sending them to the library to meet with you?
They are more than welcome to come to the Works Cafe on Main Street Wednesdays and Fridays.
Look for the sign.
Look for the sign.
In the heavens. I just have one more clarification. And then I would also assume that our town manager, in his wisdom, would also be discussing with VLCT similar issues so that we have the strength in numbers of towns. And I also think it's very important when we register our set that we have an indication of popular support, so that it's not just the town with a capital T, but it's all of us indicating to our legislators that these are our priorities.
So, interestingly, I disagree with the last bit. If you look in the some of the perceived issues that the municipal staff identify, some of them are very much capital T town. Am I doing it right? That's the municipal government. They're capital T town priorities, and we as a select board are the policy directors of the capital T town. And so I think that we do speak in that voice first. I don't necessarily think that means that sort of the lowercase t town, their voice is not heard in this discussion, but I don't want to lose that part of it. So maybe I'm not disagreeing, but I just think that
I'm sure you're not.
It came up a little bit in Franz's and I's meeting with the delegation about that, because there are things in here that's like is the for example the school board consultation component of the state statute something that the little t town is prioritizing as an issue, and it's like, no, but that is something that has come up multiple times in our arena that we think is important to bring to their attention. So I don't know, maybe a little bit of nuanced answer to that. But other board members?
With regards to uppercase and lowercase,
yes,
I think this board has a responsibility to speak to them all. When things go a level above us in government, we drop back and we still are residents of this town and have that responsibility to voice our opinion. As normally 5 of us sit here, I think we are able to have a bit of an amplification in that conversation, and using the capital T in that to hopefully have more influence.
I completely agree. Yeah. A very fair point. So there's we hold both, and that's
yes.
Yeah, you're totally right. So for me, on sort of discussing this a little bit, John sort of hit one that I wanted to add, which was overdose rates in Brattleboro. That's something I'd like to have added. So there are some in here, and I'm sure we'll hear from the public, where I think I would definitely phrase the perceived problem differently. Like I would want to change the language because I don't agree with necessarily exactly how that perceived problem should be phrased. I don't think that that's a good use of our time this evening because I'd like to see some of these priorities bubble to the surface and then us really tackle how to frame and discuss those issues and bring them to our delegation. I could really, I'm a criminal defense attorney and I could spend a lot of time on the criminal justice areas here right now, but I don't think that that's really a good use of our time. And so instead, if one of these gets put up as a priority for the board to consider and push to our delegation, then we can really spend a lot of time discussing it, and I'm happy to do it. That's my feeling for tonight, board. If you feel differently, I'm happy we can get into the nitty-gritty on them.
That's what I was saying, that I perceive our process tonight to be listening.
Yeah. Okay. So other questions or comments on the process?
I would add that I think I actually numbered all the different items here. So if we add in, I just started with the first one and went down the list. If we add the overdose rates as number 23, then we have 23 items. And it might be easier to refer to them by numbers. But over and above that, some of them are very closely linked. For example, overdose rates and enhanced drug treatment, are things that I don't think I would recommend that the legislators look at one of those without looking at the other one. So they kind of get bundled together as well. But I think, the sort of the prioritizing and maybe some melding as well. Mm-hmm. And wordsmithing in a group isn't that great a use of our time, but at least sort of organizing things a little bit conceptually of what things kind of belong in the same pot there.
And I think for that second point on maybe melding two together if they're closely related, I think that that would be something appropriate to do on the 7th. If you want to make note of that when you are making your priority thoughts.
Yeah, but I think it might be worth mentioning tonight too.
Okay. Absolutely.
Some of these drug things really do go together.
And so maybe we combine them now.
Well, so that as we're planning for the next meeting and thinking about it, that people are, looking at things that they could combine.
Yeah.
I thought that we were giving our feedback directly to the town manager prior to the November 7th.
That's correct. That's the proposed procedure. Yes. Okay. Do you want to talk about those now, Franz, or?
Well, I actually would like to start off with a couple of things that I think I would just say are very easy or else maybe not even that important. For example, the school board consultation item, which is number 21, if you number them all, they should just do that. I mean, do we really need to make that one of our priorities?
No, and
it's not that big a deal.
And I think you speak to something that's important, which is we also can just note things when we have the delegation here. We're not making this a priority of the town of Brattleboro select board, but hey, I think that's fair.
And the one above it, car service support, number 20, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be great if there was Uber or taxi or something, but I'm not sure that the legislators have a particular role in that. There's those two things, I would not be making priorities personally.
Can I interject something based on, what I did was I went through them and put them in menu 1 and menu 2. And 1 is a much higher priority, and 2 are good, but, we don't want to bet the farm on. So if we look at it that way, I think it'll be easier for us all.
It's a good way to start for sure, 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
Maybe even some 3s. But.
Yeah, which gets to the fact that, they're all issues. They're all real things, or they're all things that we hear for sure. Okay. Franz, did you have other?
I've had lots of thoughts on all these things. They're big issues. Who among us has not been hearing about panhandling week in and week out? But I'm not sure, this is a constitutional issue at the level of the United States Constitution and its First Amendment. So just as we have trouble finding things that we can legally do with regards to panhandling, whether we want to or not being a separate question, but just legally we are highly constrained from passing any kind of anti-panhandling ordinance. Well, the same is true of the state legislature. They're as restrained as we are. So I'm not sure what we would tell them about panhandling, even though I think it's a really big issue for the town.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and again, this is just the proposed process, but I'm thinking that if that issue were to be one that bubbled up to the top, and we've got the delegation here, then we have an interesting conversation about that. And maybe we learn that, because if you read the memorandum, one of the goals here is that we develop a list of priorities that we think are have a likely success, like that we can actually have some movement on them, right? And so maybe that would be some feedback we'd get if that was one that bubbled up. That's like, okay, maybe that's not really one that we're going to push to the delegation because
Okay, well,
that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, so I'm just sticking a pin in that one.
Fair
I'm
enough.
not sure there's anything that they can do about it.
Yeah.
But I will say the more we discuss this, it shows that we are paying attention and we are trying to resolve the issue. So I don't want that to get lost, because I think we are all interested in finding some equitable way to address this, but we're all a little stymied in how to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that, and also it just with this, I'm hoping we can, especially in our next discussion on this, is that there's a recognition that a lot of these issues require more than just municipal work.
It's a big issue, and we all know trying to capital T our way out of this thing, and thank you for that. I like that. Is going to be a little tough.
Yeah.
Ian?
Liz?
Just about the panhandling, I think there's some definitions, some legal definitions that we can make clear to the community about what is legal and what is illegal in the panhandling area. And I think it's very important for the public to know and understand what those limitations are. And I think we can also provide either individual or collective select board philosophy about panhandling that might be beneficial to the public.
It sounds like maybe you want to have an agenda item on panhandling alone at some point.
Why, yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So noted. Yeah. All right. The agenda setting committee has heard.
Thank you.
All right, Franz. Other? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I can also.
Well, I'll jump right on that spot. Some things that I think really we do want to include would be with regards to drug issues, treatment, and overdose deaths. I would kind of put those together and, throw in the safe injection sites idea that has come up, or safe use sites to make it more generalizable, without saying that I'm advocating for anything in particular, but I think those are the things that need to be on in the discussion in those related areas. In drugs and sort of the criminality part, I would, I'm not sure exactly whether to link them together or not, but the eviction services, if there's this kind of wanton abuse of properties without any seeming control or intervention from the property owners. I think probably we've all heard about Bennington using some type of ordinance to get dealers out of established locations, et cetera. I don't know if there's a state role needed in that or not, but that's something I think we would talk about.
So I'm just going to stop you there for a minute.
Okay.
So let's, I think I do you want to have the enhanced drug treatment item under drug addiction crisis, incorporate those, the overdose, and treatment? Is that?
I think overdose and treatment go together. I think eviction services, if we think that needs state action, I'm just not sure how that has worked in Bennington, whether they got some kind of special permission or they just went ahead and did it on their own. So I don't know if that's really, something I'm interested in, but I don't know its relationship to the state legislators.
John, on the...
I was just going to address the focus of these was trying to be on the perceived problem, not the solution. So some of these I think lead down a different path than others in terms of what might be the solution at the legislative level than others. And so grouping them might be a good thing to do. I think, Ian, you were saying do that at the next stage.
We could definitely do it then too.
Yeah, because then we're developing policy statements and you can focus then on what, maybe more on the solution side of things. But for now, the idea was to do kind of a, let's see what the collective thinking of the board is in terms of are the drug things really high, or is the mental health stuff even higher, or, that kind of level of prioritization.
Yeah.
Liz.
I just wanted to add to Franz's listing regarding drugs that we got a nice example of a drug court. I think it was from Rutland, from Jim Baker. And that idea of diversion to treatment is something that I think our town really needs.
And one of the ways that the discussion on the 7th could evolve is we say, so we've got our 5, 7, and one of them is, drug treatment, enhanced drug treatment as an issue, and we hear from our delegation, we really think that a drug treatment court in Brattleboro is a really great solution. I think in that case, maybe we amend our policy statement to say the Brattleboro Selectboard would like to see a drug treatment court in Windham County, right? And maybe that's how we get there. I don't know, John, is that one way you're sort of
seeing? I think I think a number of them, if they are really come out as a priority for the board, we may need to have quite a few conversations with the legislative delegation, with the VLCT, with other towns about what is there a legislative solution in this or not, and then develop that out. We can always, like Franz was suggesting, come back and keep this as an ongoing conversation as we learn more.
Yeah.
But for now, it's just kind of getting us started on this path and trying to focus on a few things that you really want, like me and Patrick and others to start spending time on.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes total sense.
Does that mean it could be that we could have a drug court without legislative action?
Well, that was literally going to be my very same question. It would seem like that suggestion doesn't need any more input than this panel and maybe some from our constituents. But I feel like that is something that we can capital T our way right out of that one.
I would like it, John, if you could look into the legality and processes of that.
And again, I would just suggest if enhanced drug treatment is a priority for you all, I would do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
And I would throw in, I mean, now all of a sudden we're talking about courts, and the first category is criminal justice and repeat offenders, and then if you look at number 7, it's parole reform, which then, also maybe includes bail reform, I don't know. But the whole, those are all related to what happens in court, and if, in talking with the police department and the state's attorney's office, and, we very quickly get to the point where they say, well, nothing we can do about it, it's the courts. So that, I think, really does fall under legislative purview, and
Yes.
that those items, whether it's repeat offenders or parole reform, and then maybe throwing in drug court as part of that. Anyway, I think they're all important ideas, and we should be addressing those with our legislators, either separately or together.
Yeah. Okay. And I think so that kind of gets us to, if that is one of those priorities that is at the top, then we can
I
have
think
a
that's a
discussion.
number one priority.
Well, that's
personally.
your position. Yeah. Fair
Indeed.
enough. Okay. Other discussion board, and then let's hear from the public on, specifically looking for participation from the public on, are there things that you feel like aren't represented here on issues that you think the board should be considering as potential legislative priorities to put to our delegation? And or do you feel like maybe there's something in here that almost gets there, but maybe modified a little bit would actually capture your concern? And then, I really want to stress again, these are all going to come again before the board and the public on the 7th with at least now some prioritization, and the public will have another opportunity to speak on all of these issues if they feel like something isn't in the top of the list that should be. Did you have another point before?
Yeah, I think there's one other thing I just wanted to mention. It's not quite on any of these, but we got a couple of emails, I don't know, yesterday and today, focusing very much on the community safety review process and how that interacts specifically with our meeting tonight, because I think those interested people saw that criminal justice was highlighted and the other things that related to community safety were highlighted. And I actually responded to those emails saying that that's not really what tonight's meeting is about. That, yeah, the words are there and it's an important discussion, and it's an important discussion we're going to be having over several months in terms of community safety issues from a larger perspective. But I just wanted to say to people who were tuning in with that particular set of topics in mind is that, right now we're kind of feeling our way through this process of how we're going to address things with the legislators, and that we're not ignoring the community safety issues that may come up, but that we'll really be getting to those in more detail, perhaps on November 7th and certainly after that.
Great, thank you, Franz. Okay, so, I've got a hand.
Tracy Flanner.
Tracy, yes,
again.
welcome.
A suggestion with this new and fancy website. You're looking for input from the town, the little T. How about make a website poll highlighting this list of priorities and allow the town to submit what they want. Click on and whether it's 5, your top 5 priorities, or 10, or even 15, allow the town to go through and click through and prioritize what they want And that way you have an opportunity, because who doesn't like to go in and click instead of, oh, I've got to find time and I don't have any time to do this. I've got to stop and go grocery shopping. I've got to do this. This way they can just go directly to the website and say, this is my top priority, or these are my top 5 priorities. These are my top 3 priorities. And that gives you an absolute opportunity to go and say, okay, we're going to put this on the website, on Facebook, on Instagram, or wherever it is. Allows people like me to share this on my own neighborhood website. Go to the Brattleboro, Vermont webpage on Facebook and share this and say, hey, this is your opportunity. Go to the Brattleboro Gov website. Tell them what you want. But just a suggestion.
Great. Thank you very much, Tracy. John, do you think that that's something, if the board was interested in it, would be?
If the board wants to do that, we could figure out a way to do it. It might affect a timeline just to give people enough time to do something like that. But the other thing I guess I would mention is that it probably wouldn't end up being a scientific survey. It wouldn't be like a poll. It would be more of like who was interested and went and gave their thoughts on it. But if that would be helpful to the board, we'd figure it out.
I think it's a good idea. Just, it shouldn't be too hard to put together, I wouldn't think. Let people check boxes online or even type in a few words. Am I wrong? Would it be a big problem?
I usually try to stay away from saying something won't be a big deal when I'm not the one doing it.
There's that.
So that's all that look was.
But that's just getting back to the public interest that I thought would be happening at these meetings. So why don't we hold that thought until the 7th? Because on the 7th, we might get a lot of public input about other people's small t priorities.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that doing it after the 7th would make sense if, I don't know.
Well, it would if this is an ongoing process and we get to register, town enthusiasm for certain priorities.
So do we have a date for when we would kind of deliver our final list to the legislators?
I think it depends on how the discussion on the 7th goes. And just for the public's sake, the reason we're sort of discussing this and sort of trying to figure it out, we've just never done this sort of discussion before. So it's the first time that I've seen the select board do sort of a legislative priority. So we're just sort of trying to nail down a process that makes sense. So I think it depends. I think it depends on how clear the discussion goes with the delegation, and if we kind of leave that discussion with like some very clear direction for town staff to come back to us with like final kind of policy statements. If it's clear, then maybe we're done on, we've got it, and we maybe vote on a meeting after that, or maybe there's a lot more work to be done, and then we need to reassess.
I would support doing it now then, if, because if we just feel good about it on the 7th, then we end up not doing this at all. And it seems to me it's a good way to reach out to
John,
the public.
Maybe I'll just suggest that you hear from the rest of the public and we could see if there's 3 head nods to do something like that towards the end of this item.
Sure. Okay. So we'll go to, and if we want to keep it so that the people's hands that go up aren't making all of the boxes smaller, because I know at some point the interpreter gets too small.
I agree. Do you know of a way to... It's a new feature that Zoom has imposed upon us.
Okay.
And it's not helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know a workaround for it.
Okay. We're going to work on that at the break. But let's hear from the 3 people we've got hands up now. And then we're going to probably either wrap up or take a break. So who's got their hand up first?
That would be Lisa Kincaid.
Great.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. There's just one thing that if you guys could maybe talk about at some point is holding the hotel owners and managers accountable for the safety and the drug activity and everything in the hotels. because there's a lot of children and non-drug addicts, and and I'm not putting any drug addicts down, whatever, but there needs to be accountability held for some of the conditions also. And so if the town, could work on that with the legislator and everything, that would be awesome, because, I know a lot of people think that living in the hotels is a huge luxury, and we are so lucky we do have a roof over our head. But having blood on the walls and blood on the floors, having toilets that don't work, tubs that don't drain, mold, things like that, it's not awesome. And there is no accountability to keep us safe. And so have it be with the safety issues or whatever issues, it would be awesome.
Great. Thank you very much, Lucy. I think, John, if you would be willing to modify the Resolve the Motel program item to maybe reflect that element, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next is, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. We're not in Zoom world anymore. We're back in the room. Mr. DeGray.
Just a couple of things. The school committee, the school appointment, I learned something because I didn't know it was a state statute. I know it's part of our charter, and I'm believing that you requested to take that out of our charter. But I also think it's such a moot point, really. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, that saying to our delegation, because we've had to make 2 appointments in 15 years. So I really don't think that deserves to be on the list, because it's not really a top priority. The other one about, we had a meeting last week here with John, the downtown merchants, and the eviction, what you were talking about, issues that face landlords is a very cumbersome and difficult process, how to get really bad tenants out. So I strongly believe that the landlord who is speaking on that issue, I strongly support that being on this list, because getting bad tenants out should be a priority for every landlord. And then I'm not sure why we talked about the transportation issues, because there was a couple of people. It's not the legislature's responsibility for towns to have taxi, Lyft, or Uber, or whatever else. But it is a problem in Brattleboro, and it probably should be an agenda item sometime, because the quick story is 2 ladies came in on a train. Their room was way up on Putney Road. They had no means of transportation, and they ended up walking from the train station all the way up to Putney Road where their hotel was. And the reason I found out is they took the bus down the next day and they came into our store. And so I don't believe it's a legislative issue, but it should be a town issue.
Great. Thank you very much, Dick. Yeah, I definitely, not just even to that item, I think I look at a lot of these things and I think about the fact that the town does have roles to play in a lot of them. And so this is capturing, there are a lot of issues, and there are roles to be played on every level, I think. But I appreciate that comment. Did you have a...
Well, just you live right on Frost Street there. You could easily pick people up at the train station.
That's true. I could just do that. Yeah. But the town couldn't employ me.
Farther away.
Oh. Okay. Next, we've got John.
Hi, it's not John. It's me, Robin Morgan. I just wanted to say that it seems like the intention of having this discussion and making some recommendations to the legislature is to get help in being able to address things that currently you aren't able to address because of either, legal inhibitions that get in the way, or things that are just too big for the town to address on its own. And I would really appreciate if that was how these items were prioritized. If you think about, like, on this list, what are the things that are most deeply impacting our town that are too big or structurally there are barriers to being able to be addressed. So things that are like deeply impacting a lot of the things on this list are poverty, housing struggles, substance use disorder issues, and mental health care. So those are sort of like the four underlying problems that are underneath a lot of the other things on this list that I would say are some of the things that are listed are more like a surface level issue that's a behavior caused by these other problems. So I don't think it's a worthwhile use of the legislative priorities to be like, help us address these behaviors. Instead, it seems more worthwhile to address the root causes, and that will help alleviate a lot of the other problems.
Great. Thank you very much, Robin.
Also, I just wanted to appreciate, I know that Franz mentioned receiving letters from other people in the town, and I just wanted to read a little bit of a letter from M. Megas Russell, because I think that they really summed up some things here that better than I can say myself. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just wanted to read this part of it.
Yeah, if you can just keep
and I really
in about a minute, please.
Okay, it's very short. This is M's words. My sincere hope and ask is that when these perceived problems are discussed at tonight's select board meeting with the public, and if legislative requests or solutions are explored, that folks, especially our town leaders, are able to bring a more nuanced and root cause analysis to the way that these conversations and problems are framed. The framing of these problems in this table concern me as they present a subjective and biased lens on what constitutes the problem. I do see and understand that including lack of access to mental health and substance use treatment on this table are part of the web of understanding the root causes of these problems. However, this table heavily skews the problem towards the perspectives of middle-class community members and property and business owners. Of course, these are the people, myself included, who have the time, energy, resources, and privilege of access and safety to speak up and be heard, or to answer a survey, or to attend a meeting. The power dynamics that are at play in public discussions about safety are going largely unaddressed or openly rejected. This concerns me greatly as it communicates a strong preference for the perspectives around safety and unsafety held by people who already hold a lot of power and in many ways already have access to the privilege of safety relatively. So that's what I just wanted to name about the way that these perceived problems are described, and some there's like causes attributed to the problems on this table that are sort of groundless, and I think are really like people's perception of the cause. It's not necessarily the actual cause or the actual impact of, for instance, the panhandling one. I don't think there's a great deal of basis to say that panhandling is a root cause of substance use issues. Those are related problems.
Yep.
But
all right, I'm going to move on to the next person who's got his hand up. You're welcome to raise your hand again, but I want to give the other person an opportunity to speak. But I will hear from the board first.
Could I draw? There's sort of a semi-medical analogy in there of root causes versus symptoms. And I think both are important. I think it's very important to address root causes in ways that we can and that are likely to be effective. I think it's also important to recognize that that can take a long time and require work on part of many, many different people and institutions to make those things happen. The symptoms that those root causes lead to, whether it's, break-ins or, something else, can also be addressed. You don't have to pick one or the other. And I think it makes sense to pick and choose and say, where can I make a difference for the people who are on the short end of whatever the various sticks are and are dealing with the consequences of behaviors, some of which have long-term solutions and some of which maybe have shorter-term solutions. Anyway, I just think as a board member, I'm looking for answers in all those different directions rather than just restricting myself to one or the other.
Okay. Franz? And I'm trying to read the name Catherine.
Yep.
Great. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. And I just want to first say that I really appreciate all the time that we put in. Everybody on the select board, I know it's a real challenge. And I know you're putting in a lot of your personal time, and I appreciate that. I'm I'm a researcher, and I've been doing it for long enough to discover like just some basic stuff. And I mean, one thing that just strikes me is I'm concerned about the way that this list was developed, because perceptions are not necessarily reality. And what kind of evidence do we actually have to support that these are like major issues? And just to give you an example, one of the things was, well, criminals are being left, are not staying in jail long enough, and they're back out on the street. Do we really know that that's an issue? And I'm not saying that people aren't experiencing that. They may see somebody they know went to jail, and they see them on the street. It's just but that doesn't really mean that that's a serious problem for us as a town. So I was concerned about a lot of the wording. I know that other people have expressed that as well. But I just want to say that basing this on perceptions, it just concerns me as an approach. And that's it. Thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Great. Thank you very much, Catherine. Appreciate that. And appreciate that criticism. I think, I definitely, as I sort of started this all off, have some serious issues with some of the wording on some of these perceived issues. I'm excited to sort of get into the nitty-gritty on the priorities for policy positions that the select board's going to vote on either on the 7th or at a later meeting, depending on how messy the discussion gets. There's probably other ways to go about starting this discussion that's not on perception. And maybe we can work on ways to sort of start this discussion differently next time. It's, again, sort of like the first time the board's really tried to start this discussion. And this was sort of the way that we landed on, just because we hear a lot of things, and so getting those things down on paper to just like start getting at them and start getting at discussing roadblocks that the municipality experiences that are beyond our control, and maybe we can have help on a legislative level, was a way to get the discussion moving. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. But Liz,
I have another.
And careful, Catherine, you are not muted, so.
I just have another.
All right, now you're muted. Don't worry, I couldn't hear what you said, and if you were saying my comment was dumb, that's fine.
I just want to talk a minute about the word perception. That's how this document was framed. But I think a lot of people push back on perception that people experiencing crime is just a perception. And I would like to counter with, it's a reality. And I think that reality can be proven by crime statistics and also some of the elements about people not, the bail issue, that has a basis in reality. And we see that time and time again. And it's in the newspaper, but it's also within the ranks of our criminal justice system and policing. So we can add reality to this list of perceived perceptions to make it real and to get our point across that these are issues that we need help with from the legislature. And I think it would be a much stronger position. So I appreciate Catherine's comments because it allows us to make a stronger final document or interim document, whatever, pitch to the legislature because these issues are real and, the people in Brattleboro, all aspects of the community need to be safe and they need to be, in their homes or on the street. There's victims of all sorts in Brattleboro, and we need to address it for the good of our community.
Thank you, Liz. Franz, and then I'd like to just sort of conclude this.
Just a very brief seconding of Liz's and yours and Catherine's comments, which is it kind of strikes me as a plea for data. And by all means, if we have good data to support the ideas that we generate, that'd be great. Of course, finding data can be difficult and a lot of work, et cetera. But if it's out there, it would be really great to have it. If people have that available to help us, I'd really love to see numbers on some of these problems. That'd be excellent.
Peter.
Yeah, so with regards to data, it's really good stuff, but when we know something's happening, do we still actually need the data? I mean, these are things that this board, as I said in the last meeting, we've all received emails, we all get stopped on the street, we all get asked questions, I get text messages regarding these problems. So these are indeed not so much perception, but these are things that are actually happening. I think data is good if we can meld the two together so that one doesn't slow down the other. I'm a fan, but if data is going to slow down the process of moving forward and saying what Liz was saying, I'm not a fan.
I just want to say that there is a counter narrative about perception. And I think that we need to be clear about what reality is so that we're not talking about my perception versus your perception, but we're talking about what is.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. You know, one letter to the editor that hit the paper this morning has already been shared out as a narrative, a representative of the whole town, and that would be false. That would be a false narrative, right? I mean, this is one person's experience, and it's going to blanket the entire town. That is not representative of this entire municipality. It is a representative of that point in time, what happened, and the negative response in which it drew down. So I get it, but we know that these things do happen. It is up to this board to figure out, which is what we're doing here tonight, and we'll do at the next meeting to address it. And I feel fairly comfortable with this process. I don't think it's a waste of gas. So, I'm looking forward to the next conversation around it. And this is not going to be a 2-meeting and here's your cure thing. So, these things move very slow. It takes backbone to carry it. It takes more than 5 people to carry it. I will say that. So more community members that weigh in, that will give us actual data, actual thing, then we're able to act a little bit more. Right now we might be looking at it from 30,000 feet. We need to touch the ground and figure out how it impacts everybody.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah. All right, board. So we've got basically a framework for a process established. The last hanging question was about sending out a survey, and if we were to do that, would we do it before the next meeting or not? I'm going to take the opportunity to speak to it briefly. I was originally I liked the idea, and then I realized that I don't think I feel comfortable with all of the language of all of these, the way that they are, and I don't really want to put it out like this as a select board document. This came from municipal staff, and we're able to work with it. We're going to look at priorities. We're going to work on this language at the next meeting. If we do that work and we're like, land with like 12 or 15 items where we've worked the language and we feel better about it, or I feel better about it, and maybe we want to put it out as a poll then, that would be fine with me. But I think like with where this is at right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting it out as a poll.
Yeah, it does. It spans everything from narrative to reality to perception.
I know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's kind of my...
I don't think we're there yet either.
Okay.
How many votes do I get?
That's a good question.
Just the one, Franz.
Does your
Just
degree give you...
So
we don't have any. So we don't have 3 on that. So I think in that case, there was no motion.
Nope. No motion requested.
Okay. So in that case, we're gonna. Just to wrap this item up, we're gonna have the next meeting on the 7th. The delegation has been invited to join us on the 7th to discuss this more. We'll have narrowed this a bit. We'll have all of these items for discussion again, and we'll I think we'll have some real education. I just got an email from one of them about drug courts. I don't really want to bring that into the record right now, but like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to learn more about these issues and whether they're legislative priorities or maybe they're other things that we can be working on. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. And I appreciate everyone's work on.
Quick clarification.
Yes.
Were we going to work on the wording before the next meeting, or is this we're just going to let it rip as?
I think we're going to each board member will give their perspective between now and the next meeting and then we will work on that wording at the next meeting for the priority ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
To John.
John.
Yeah, and we can, if you have, maybe as part of the survey to the select board, I'll ask you for adjustments to some of that language so that we can incorporate it into draft policy statements for you to consider on the 7th. So.
Yeah, and maybe we get to a place where we have policy statements to consider on the 7th. Maybe it needs another meeting.
Yeah, and that could be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, I know we're over on a break time, so let's take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene a little after 8:40. So. All right, so we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8E1, which is the budget planning FY25 general fund budget initiative discussion. So board, we're doing the budget discussion a little bit differently this year. And so what the discussion tonight about is basically a look at new or enhanced service initiatives that town staff have generated for our consideration. And this is coming after a budget engagement open house that was held on the 28th of September at the Brooks Memorial Library. I think the thing that's a little different about how we're doing it this year is the board hasn't had an opportunity yet to see like a full budget, right? So we don't really know what just the cost of operation is going to look like and what just FY25 is going to be if we made no changes yet. And so what my understanding for what we're being asked of tonight is to look at some of these enhanced service initiatives and to indicate to John and the town manager's office if there are any in here that we see as potential things that we would want to consider in a proposed FY25 budget so that they can take the additional time and work is necessary to fully flush out these ideas. So, if you were to look at this very briefly and not really read into it, you would just see this immense number of, additional personnel and all these expanded, department initiatives. And that what we're looking for tonight is for the select board to identify specific ones that you'd like to see presented as part of maybe an alternative FY25 budget that incorporated these things, so that when we're considering the budget and proposing it to RTM, we've had an ability to both see what it looks like with these initiatives considered and without them. And with that, I will turn it over to John to speak to it a little bit more. And the last thing I'd say is we don't have the department heads here tonight to discuss in detail these particular initiatives, because if we identify some that we think are worth additional consideration, when they come back to us with the full this is actually how much this is going to cost. This is what it's going to be, the fiscal impact for FY25. Then department heads and whoever's involved in those initiatives are going to be available for the board to discuss further before considering actually incorporating it into the FY25 budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. We started the FY25 budget process back in April, actually, when we did an after-action review of the FY24 budget process. Several improvements were identified then, including better financial software and consolidated select board budget review at more of a policy level. You asked the RTM Finance Committee to weigh in, and they did as well in May with some additional suggestions such as a more participatory budgeting model with opportunities for public input earlier in the process, focusing more on major changes rather than going over the traditional list of everything each department does, and requesting substantial community engagement on the allocation of ARPA funds. In June, you authorized acquisition of the OpenGov financial software, which is now being configured, as Kim Frost indicated to you earlier, and we hope to have to go live with in early November. In August, staff came back to you with a draft budget process that incorporated many of these continuous improvements and goals for FY25. You formally adopted this process in September, following some refinements that were incorporated after staff met again with the RTM Finance Committee to get their additional ideas. So now we are fully engaged in the FY25 budget process, which is outlined on page 59 of your backup materials. On Thursday, September 28th, staff held the first annual budget enhancement open house at the Brooks Memorial Library. Each department presented and provided information to the public about the services they offer, what they plan to continue, what they plan to stop, and what they propose to add or enhance. This info is all available on the FY25 Budget Project webpage at brattleboro.org. Staff took feedback at this open house to start to refine ideas about new or enhanced service initiatives. These are described starting on page 60 of your backup materials. Now, the town may not be able to afford any of these initiatives, but you don't have to decide that tonight, as Ian was pointing out. In November, staff will bring you a draft FY25 budget with a base budget that continues the FY24 services, with the exception of the service reductions that are listed on page 63 of your backup. Staff will illustrate the tax impact expected with that base budget, as well as any alternatives for new or enhanced services that you would like us to develop. So tonight, it would be really helpful to get feedback on any of these initiatives that you would definitely like to hear more about, or that you would definitely not like to hear more about. Also, if there are initiatives missing from for the FY25 General Fund budget development, please let us know what those are. Again, I want to emphasize that we really may not be able to afford any of these new or enhanced services, but this could be decided in November or December when you see some or all of these initiatives as alternates in the draft budget. We wanted to show you the fullest list possible of services that could benefit the community early in the process, as was suggested in the after action review. And as Ian pointed out, I don't have department heads here tonight, so the intent was not to drill down into the details, but really be getting policy level feedback at this stage, which would be very helpful. For example, are there any of these initiatives that developing more information would be a worthwhile use of staff time?
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. So I want to so there's no motion board, so we're just going to have discussion. Before the discussion, John, what would stop the board from just saying, do them all?
Nothing. In fact, that would be helpful feedback, and we would include those all those items as alternates in the budget, and you could see what the expected cost would be at that time and figure out if you wanted to proceed with any of them or none of them at all.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Yep. Can we do this the same way we did the previous action and give our comments to the town manager?
I'd rather just sort of nail it down so that we.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yeah.
Well, I liked, I could see going forward to evaluate all of them except, I don't agree that the library is the best place for a social worker. I think there are other elements asking for social workers at the within the fire department or the police department is more appropriate. I don't want the library to be bogged down with social work. Also, for the self-checkout, one of the things that STAR's always said about the benefits of the library is people coming in for human contact. And so mechanizing that contact defeats that purpose.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Other board members? Also, the question of can we just do all of them? I just wanted to clarify that that wasn't even an option. We don't have to do it that way. We could also just identify a couple that we want the town manager's office to come back with. That's.
But anyway, the rest, yeah.
So you would be okay. Other board members? Ron?
Sure. I did sort of run up just a little grand total for sort of the median figure of what this would cost if we just did all of them, and it came out to just about $950,000.
So,
budget.
and let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Because when I'm saying, could we do all of them, what I'm saying is, could we consider all of them individually impacting the FY25 budget? I'm not saying that we would do all of them.
I don't think this is a context-free discussion.
Okay.
We need to have, right from the start, a vision of what's possible, I think. So, anyway, and I don't think, and I'm not even going to say that we shouldn't look at them all in detail. Certainly, if people have favorite things they want to look at, I'm not going to say, no, we can't look at that. So I'm really just sort of setting the table for my own thinking about what we could end up doing. But there's none of these that I think is a bad idea. But there's a couple of them that I think are particularly good ideas. And I think the IT coordinator position is one that will defend us. I'm not sure how to provide the function of cybersecurity for the town, but I think we need to look at that really hard and come up with something that will keep all our systems from getting shut down by somebody who then says, okay, I'll unlock them for $10 million. I think that's a risk. And John was telling me that I guess there's been some level of insurance against that and then reinsurance against the insurance, and that's going away. That's what we've heard from the League of Cities and Towns. So we need to provide that security ourselves, is the way it seems. If there's a way to, have I don't know what the other structure would be besides an IT coordinator, but I think the function of cybersecurity has to go to the top of the list of things that we're doing, in this budget year. And the other one that has come up so many times is alternatives to traditional policing in terms of there's a 911 call, we send people with weapons and uniforms, and sometimes, of course, that's exactly what we need to do. There's discussion back and forth of maybe that's always the initial thing we need to do, but clearly there have been many voices advocating and really providing reasons that that's not always the best response, and that we need something either within the police department or separate from the police department that is a more nuanced and non-threatening response in a lot of situations. I've tried looking a little bit online about that. How do you do it? What size town do you need? Stuff like that. I don't have answers to any of that, but I think it's something that is part of our community safety discussion. I don't know if we should put it in the budget. I mean, I don't know what we should do with that, but I think that aside from the cybersecurity, that's the single most important thing that I think we need to look at in this list.
Great, thank you very much, Franz. Other board members? Liz?
I just want to comment that I had a conversation with Joe Krasinski last week, who's the Speaker of the House, and she was reiterating to me that the state has a lot of money and that we should be asking for it for municipal needs, and in particular with regard to mental health services that the town needs. HCRS should be asking for this money, and we should be helping them get that money. But in every case, it would be inappropriate for the town staff to go forward with any of these initiatives without first seeing whether the state of Vermont can give us the money for this work.
Thank you, Liz. If the board were to identify one of these initiatives where potential state or federal funding could be available to help fund it, could that work be done prior to it coming back to the board for FY25 budget consideration?
We can do the best we could at that. Probably wouldn't be able to get a final answer by then.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be more of an element of eligibility than a definitive response.
And I'm thinking, for example, HR asking for a social worker, and you learn, if we identified that as one that is a priority, and there's some legwork done, and you learn that there may be some funding available, but like you need more time, that might inform the board to say, all right, well, let's not put it into FY25, and let's make sure that there isn't a funding pool available before we were to spend taxpayer dollars on it. That's kind of more what I mean, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
It may be difficult to get a definitive answer, even by the time RTM comes around. It's like that these are difficult questions, and I would say that we can certainly work on trying to find opportunities like that year round. This is a way for you to do something immediate through the budget process.
I mean, it might be a matter of reimbursement, but I just think that we should avail ourselves of what the state is offering and the fact that we have this crackerjack staff and other resources like VLCT who could advise us and the state themselves about what's available. So I want the process to go forward before we spend our own money needlessly.
Totally agree with that.
That raises, for me, a pretty big question of do we have the adequate capability for tracking down the sources of funding? It's a little bit difficult, I think, when we're talking about adding positions, because you get a grant and that's great, but then what do you do the next year or the third year or whatever you're looking at then? But if there's, to have the Speaker of the House come down and tell you, hey, we got lots of money, that's an unusual event in my experience anyway. And we should certainly take advantage of it. And, presumably it's competitive. So how do we go after that money? What can we reasonably plan for the future based on that money? And then John brought something up the other day about our capabilities of actually putting the money to use if we had it. If we need, how are we in a good position to actually take that money in and make something happen on the ground? So those would be my considerations. But boy, if Jill said that, I think that's something we should jump right on top of.
Yeah, and I mean that there's municipal services, but another big thing that's a state priority is housing. So we all say we want to. It bleeds into the ARPA discussion, but state funding for housing is a state priority, and I would think it would be short-sighted of us to spend that money without asking what the state can do.
Yeah. All right. So keeping to this, I think if we can be so bold as to add something to this.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that what I'm hearing, at least from two and myself included, which makes three, would be to see something come before the board for FY25 budget consideration for aiding the town in accessing state funding and or implementation once we get it. So I don't know if that's an
Was
expanded.
there something in here, a grants manager or something like that?
No. I think the one thing probably under DPW, there could be something on when we get funding for specific projects that DPW would be responsible for, expanding that could be a way to interpret it. But I'm more looking at like just, when we get told, hey, there's money for this or that, how are we translating that information to getting out there, getting it? Do we need to be putting more money? Like, if we're looking at just how are we best using taxpayer dollars, one way would be to, amplify taxpayer dollars by using taxpayer dollars to get additional state funding, and if we're doing that efficiently or not.
Oh.
So
I think we had at one point contemplated some sort of a grants manager.
Yeah, I believe there was conversation about that in the past. Right now, we have mostly department heads going for grants and that sort of thing. So like that example of the additional deputy director at the Department of Public Works would be one way to address it on the transportation side and utility side.
I know planning's very good at it.
Yes, planning does quite a bit of that as well, as do other departments. I mean, the library, everyone goes for grants wherever they can. It just takes a lot of work. And we do have a grants person that helps with tracking them in the finance department, but we don't really have anyone engaged solely in the exercise of going out and finding funding and applying for it and working with the departments to apply it.
I truly believe that VLCT is a resource for that.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to kind of nail you down on exactly what this would look like, I guess what I'm trying to convey is just this is an area where the board's interested in seeing something potentially presented for the FY25 budget. I'm not saying that's a new position necessarily. Like, come back to us with what you after.
Could even be a consultant.
It could be, or it could be expanded position, or it could be, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah,
and I do know that Sue Fillion has looked at some contract solutions to this sort of need, and I don't know how far she's gotten with that, but maybe we could add something like that
I know from my time on the board that we are good at getting grants, right? So we're good at writing them. We're good at doing this work. So I'm not trying to say that we're not doing this work already, but I'm just thinking, how can we even improve it and get how can we improve this process?
And it also just seems to me like the ARPA money that this is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence happening now. And so rather than have a full-time position year after year, this is something that needs to be done in the next year or two, and then not. It's gone. The opportunity and the money would be. So.
Okay. Yeah. I think that don't want to beat it to death too much here. So, okay. Other priorities, board?
No, and generally, I'm okay with the overall arching of this conversation, so I don't really have that much to add to it. I'd like to see it. I think there's a lot of this stuff that's on here that can be contracted out. I think we can find money to pay for some of it, so I think looking at it is good.
For the HR base compensation study, would that make union negotiations easier?
That would help our next round of union negotiations because we'd have a more solid ground to know what our competition is like. But this would not be applicable for 3 years because we're in a 3-year contract now. So it wouldn't be needed for 3 3 years to affect the union negotiations. This is more something about retention and attracting for vacancies.
Okay. And it's not evergreen. So
But
it's like we would have it.
Yeah.
So we would.
Point in time. Yeah.
Okay.
But ultimately, if all of this were in order the way HR wants it, then it would have to translate into whenever the next union is.
Yes, it would ultimately translate into future union negotiations.
So Ian's not wrong.
No.
Yeah, I'm more thinking about timing for when we would want to. I mean, it's not. It's not one of the bigger asks here. I was just curious.
Attraction, recruitment and retention is an ongoing issue, and we do know that other municipalities are doing a lot in that space, and we want to consider whether we're staying competitive. So
yeah.
Is that anything that OpenGov would help with? I mean, I'm just wondering if we can do something like this, or at least a decent job of it in-house.
I think that we would need the expertise to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is quite a bit of research funds to go around, and some firms already have databases of that, but it's not an OpenGov type application.
Okay. So I feel like we're kind of moving towards doing them all, which was not what I was expecting us to do tonight, but I'm fine with that being the direction of the board. My question to John would be, do you feel like we're going to be able to have a productive FY25 budget discussion if it's going to be now like all of these items?
I said a couple of no's, by the way.
True. Okay. No, I guess we could. Okay.
I think the more that's in this makes the conversation in November and December more difficult, and it may lead you to want to either spend quite a long meeting on these topics alone, or finding additional time. So.
Okay. So do you want to try to narrow down a little bit more?
Well, I would say that, there's a few of these that involve social worker or social work-like individuals, and that rather than have different ones in different departments, maybe there's a more centralized social work function that could be used by different departments as needed, whether it's at the library, the police department, or fire department.
That's basically the HR one.
That's kind of the HR one. I'm not sure it belongs in HR, but, So some of these would then maybe obviate others.
Okay.
And that coincides with my comment as well.
So maybe we are narrowing this down a little bit. So the HR social worker as an initiative.
That's on page 62.
Thank you. And that sort of removes the other HR ones, or the other social work ones for right now.
Except that I'd probably put it in the police department primarily and make it available to other departments, as opposed to putting it in HR. So I'm just saying, I don't know what goes in HR.
Yeah. I mean, you just take a couple words out of the HR one to say police and not fire or library.
Okay. So to not get too bogged down here, but like that as one item.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to identify the base compensation study as one that I think we should do.
Okay.
I know I'm kind of, and I think the other one for me would be I think one of either the deputy director or assistant highway supervisor for DPW, and I'm not really sure which of those to prioritize over the other. And that is one of the flaws too strong of word. One of the elements of doing it this way is without more than this information, it's a little hard for me to make a priority judgment.
I think it behooves the town to come back to us and, maybe you want to whittle this down yourself and come to us with a more definitive rationale.
I would, yeah. I don't dislike that approach. It's kind of a way for the guy who's got to sort of execute the plan to kind of create the plan, right?
I'm happy to do that. As I mentioned before, the idea was to get more participation on the items before they kind of get filtered through the town manager's office. But I'm happy to do that if that would be helpful.
Well, for example, the part-time assistant town clerk hours, right? The town clerk's office has a staff of 2.5 full-time employees. Well, it seems like a no-brainer to have another half-time position to bring it up to 3.
But then it will have the FY25 budget implicate?
Yeah,
impact.
absolutely.
So are you identifying that as one you want to see sort of fleshed out the rest
I
of the way?
want them all except for the first 2. I already said that.
Okay.
I
want to get this sort of resolved.
Unless, staff comes back with a refined plan of what's realistic versus the town's department head wish list, which I think could be done.
Up to the board.
Yeah. Thoughts?
I value the perspective of the town administration on that.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is take some of what I've heard, work with the department head team, and come back with more refined inclusions in the draft FY25 budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the ones that have been definitely highlighted, social worker, IT coordinator, DPW, probably deputy director, as specific ones, but yeah.
Base compensation study.
Base compensation study.
Clerk, and that was the real ones I heard.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, and the additional of.
Yes. Grant, something with the grant.
Yes.
Grants. Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't we just hire additional custodians?
We did hire one additional custodian with using partially the utility budget and partially the general fund budget.
They're in the parking fund.
Oh, parking fund, I'm sorry, that's what I meant, yeah. Yes.
So let's hear from the public on this issue.
Oh, just wanted to.
Yes.
There's a nice little paragraph at the end about ways that we could save money.
Yes.
Doesn't say how much money. It seems like most of them are probably relatively small dollar items. But if there's any way to expand that list, I mean, I know many of my Republican friends are big fans of zero-based budgeting. And, you got to recreate and justify everything from the ground up every year. I'm not so big on that, but.
In Brattleboro, these people are?
Republicans in Brattleboro?
Let's not get there.
Okay, let's not go there. But the idea that, hey, are we also spending time and energy looking for ways to cut back on things that aren't needed anymore, to rearrange things in a way that is more efficient? Not saying you haven't done that, but there's this always momentum in the growth direction. If there's any way to pull that back in a little bit, it would be great.
So this was the result of that sort of exercise to look at all the services. We also, that was part of the feedback we were looking for at the budget open house. We didn't get a lot of suggestions for don't do this anymore. We more heard suggestions do more, do things additional. So that's kind of where we landed. That's, I think, going to be human nature.
Yeah.
But we will continue to incorporate not a zero-based approach, but a hard look at what we might stop. And certainly if the board has ideas about areas that you feel like we should not be doing those services, then that would be great to hear about it, and we can look into proposals around that. So.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really hard to come up with, we don't have to do that anymore.
Yep.
But I think we have an obligation to be at least thinking along those lines.
Yeah, and that's why these were included.
And ask some kind of numbers on that would be helpful. Just, are we talking about real money here or not?
Yeah, in fact, FTE reductions is where we get most of our money.
Yeah.
A lot of these other things are more about shifting priorities around so that we are making the most efficient use of FTEs and allowing us to do potentially some of the additional services or enhanced services in those departments.
Can you just define FTE for people who don't know?
Full-time equivalent.
So it's about human power,
Capacity.
Capacity.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Franz. And I was Googling, and I actually managed just to Google Brattleboro Selectboard rules, and I was able to get it right away. Our rules on identifying conflicts of interest. So I want to be compliant. My wife was the basically person who did the roller skating program for Rex and Park last year. She's a very avid roller skater. And so I would basically recuse myself from if we were to put this to a vote or something on reevaluating of the spring roller skating program. So I just wanted to identify that for the board now before we got any further down the road on that one.
And we weren't looking for any motion or decisions tonight.
I figured as much, but I just figured I'd get in front of it now. With that, let's have some brief discussion from the public, and then we'll move on to ARPA. I don't see any hands in Zoom. I see one.
Somebody in Zoom?
Nope.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. Like Franz, and actually from the open house, which I thought was great, so give you kudos for that. My complaint was that you didn't feed the department heads or have snacks for everybody visiting. I'm really concerned when I went and talked to every department head, the first question I asked is staffing increases. And like you, the first thing when I came in here this evening, I asked Kim about, there's no total here for the number of staffing increases, and she went through and gave me a number. It's a little bit lower than Franz's, but it's a really considerably high number. I might have thought that John might have had conversations with the department heads and maybe said, this isn't the year for that. This is a bigger priority. But be that as it may, I don't see anything here either about the capital plan. Any discussion about the capital plan, which has a huge, huge impact. And just because it's there doesn't mean we automatically approve it. You have the ability to say, we're not going to do that this year. I haven't seen the board do that for several years, and I think it's about time they probably should. But, just looking at this and all these requests, and I know they're not going to probably all go through, this budget seems to be, wow, from my guess. And the things that I hear most about Brattleboro is we're really becoming unaffordable. And so that's a concern I have moving forward, and looking forward to the discussion on, what is it, the 17th?
Yes, I believe you are correct. Thank you very much for that, Dick. And I think just to note, asking for additional work to be done to see FY25 fiscal impacts for these initiatives does not mean the board has to go forward with any of them. In fact, there's a possibility that just the base increase in operating what we have going right now may be all the board's willing to sort of consider proposing to RTM. So that is one of the things about doing the budget this way. And in some ways, I think it's a benefit because we can have an opportunity to consider them first and then actually think about the fiscal impact when we're looking at the FY25 budget, instead of sort of having it worked into the budget already and then having to sort of pull it out. Yeah, John.
Well, I was just going to address the capital plan.
Yes, please.
So that we will just bring as part of the base budget
That's what I figured.
based on our capital plan and
Yeah.
overall capital plan over the years for replacement. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I don't see any other hands in Zoom, and I just learned that our interpreters need to be done at 10, so I'd like to just move us forward.
Let me just add a little bit to what you said, Ian, that this is a new process. It's been difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around it because I'm so used to the old process, and I think there may be people out there in the community who have that same issue. I think it's partly what Dick was just saying. So bear with us, maybe, and we'll see how this goes.
yeah, appreciate that, Franz, and that's why I was trying to describe where we were in that process, and we'll keep doing that if it's helpful for people.
Yes, very much so. Okay, so clear enough direction, John?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thumbs up on
Got
that. So we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8E2, which is the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA update. So this is basically board just opportunity for town manager to let us know sort of the next steps for ARPA, and I'll let him speak.
Yeah, at the budget engagement open house, Ian, and subsequently through a community survey, staff got a lot of feedback on potential ARPA projects from the public. It was great. Earlier this year, the select board requested a list of potential ARPA projects from staff. This list was recently updated prior to doing this community survey to represent 28 projects with preliminary cost estimates. The community survey was based on this list of 28 potential ARPA projects, and people were asked in that survey which of these were most important. The results from 229 responses are in tiny print on page 64 of the backup materials. And also, there was an enlarged copy for each of the board that is before you. And I'm not sure if we can put that up on the screen, Patrick, or not, but if that's a difficult thing, I think people can look at the page 64 and hopefully magnify it if they have it online. The survey also asked people what projects were missing. So we had two things. We had responses to the 28 that we had budget numbers on, and we had what's missing from this. And so that list of new ideas starts on page 69 of the backup materials and goes through page 71. Staff are recommending going back out to the public again with a second survey that reconciles the top vote getters on the 28 projects with all of the new ideas. If that works for the board, we'd send out that second survey for like 4 to 6 weeks, promote it widely, and bring a final prioritized list for consideration here in December.
Sounds good.
That's the proposal. So.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, board. So that's the kind of next steps on ARPA. Discussion, do you want to, concerns about doing it that way? You want to change it?
Sounds good.
Are there other ARPA items that you would like to suggest be added? I saw Liz's hand first.
Yes, but I'm going to answer a different question.
You're answering a different question?
Yes, because there's just some tweaks to this that I'd like to discuss now. Can we discuss that now?
Yes, but let me just get Peter just to make sure
Sure.
it's not different, like a one.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion that I received, which I thought was a good one. If there could be a certain amount of funding, and I had talked with John about this as well. It just doesn't. It's not just relying on ARPA funding, but it does pull in ARPA funding, and that is doing some sort of a collaborative effort with maybe the BDCC, the DBA, maybe even the chamber, to do I don't know, just sort of a driver for downtown to repopulate some of the empty spaces. M&T Bank will soon, unfortunately, be Sam's, and to come up with some sort of a strategy idea and some financial reward for that to execute that plan.
Yeah, so like, I'm trying to think of what is like an incubator for.
Yeah, not so much an incubator,
Okay,
right? But
different.
more of like, hey, we want to do this, and this is going to be the best fit, and you know, and should they, again, pulling the town out of it, just being sort of the financier behind the idea, and letting somebody like the BDCC who runs small business contests all the time, they have the playbook. You know, with a push from maybe the DBA and the chamber to encourage people to apply, coming up with ways to actively put the town in a seat of being able to help fill what will be vacancies in our downtown.
Let's add it
All right.
to the list. So I'm just trying to think of how.
I just wanted to mention that the DBA and probably the chamber together are doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think
they have succession planning, and they know which stores are people are retiring. That's their job, and if we can help them with that, that would be something for the list.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm not talking about like what is sort of like what they do normally, and you're right, they do that normally, but this would just I'm just trying to bring this sort of above and make it a little louder, a little brighter, a little shinier, more attractive.
I just wouldn't go forward without discussing with the DBA, because I know that the DBA is involved.
Literally, I just talked to John Powder about it and just blurted it out tonight. So
I
again,
think
it's just an exploration.
I think
for the idea.
I think that we had planned that at this meeting, the select board would have an opportunity to add items
Absolutely.
for putting into the vote.
I'm just saying that I know that they're working on it, and I applaud them for it, and I applaud you, Peter, for wanting to beef it up.
Cool. So
as long as I'm getting applause. All right.
all around.
All around.
So we'll add that, and I will rely on John's ability to take that and make it into a succinct thing.
Oh, I can.
People could vote on.
I can
help with the language on it.
I can help with the language.
Okay. Cool. Liz.
Okay. Number 6.
Yep.
Potential mobile crisis team design. This has kind of been replaced by our discussions about social workers and HCRS. I mean, we might want to bring them all those thoughts together, but I just think we need to update it based on what our current thinking is regarding mental health, HCRS, and community safety.
John's.
And one thing, I wasn't clear in what I said earlier, but it is in the memo. We were proposing to cut off at about 10% of what we heard from the public. If something didn't get 10% of the basically feedback that this is an interesting thing, we would cull those ones just to make it easier to resurvey people on looking at the new things and the top vote getters from the staff list. But if that's not what the board wants to do, if you want to dive down further on that list, we can certainly do that. Or if you want to just include all of them and give people, 75 different projects, we can do that as well.
I think it makes sense to call it, and so that there are less that the community impact, proposed ones plus the ones that got sufficient votes that we know there's some interest, means that we'll have like less for people to consider. If we just do all of them, it's just going to dilute the information that we're going to get from the voting. That's
Okay.
my opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about this because I think it's redundant, so.
Did that one get?
That one did not, and that's why I
Didn't
brought it
make
up.
it, so
because it's
fine.
It's gonna get cut.
So-
But there's a couple of things that I still want to talk about.
Yep.
I don't know whether downtown public restrooms, yeah, look at that, that's number 2. And my opinion is that I would only be interested if the Brattleboro Transportation Center was the site. And I could wax on about that, but I think that we need to examine what kind of a town we are. And we're a working class town. And I've seen ritzy towns with nice facilities, but I don't think that they've had the history of drug use and prostitution we've had when we've had public bathrooms.
So, fair points. I just think that you're like 3 steps ahead of the discussion. So I think what we want to try to do is let people vote with the additional things that were added, and maybe public restrooms drops way low, right? Because maybe everybody likes. No, but it's number 2 on this last survey, but we want to do another one with all these additional things.
Okay. I'm still going to go forward because that's what I'm going to do. Because look at what the next number 18 is, grant project management.
Could I
Yes.
have an interjection here, which is,
Yeah.
I could really use a refresher on what we're allowed to do with ARPA money. Because I've been thinking, anything, spend it on consultants for fees and stuff like that?
Popcorn, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting. So I'm going to look at Patrick to make sure I'm doing this right. So my understanding is that we got advised by VLCT on how to use the ARPA money.
Which one's 10?
To basically,
I'm just saying.
We used it, and now the savings that we used is now the ARPA money, and so that is now basically it's like the actual ARPA money was already used for. Am I explaining this correctly?
Can I start over?
Yes, please.
Okay. So after consulting with the League of Cities and Towns, our auditors, and our attorney, there is general agreement that municipalities, at least in Vermont and perhaps elsewhere, should use the ARPA money specifically for staff salaries. And the rationale there is that it greatly simplifies the reporting back to the federal government. And so what we will do, if the board wishes to use $10,000 of ARPA to do a $10,000 program of some kind, we would take that $10,000, utilize it to pay staff salaries, and then tax dollars, $10,000 would be transferred out of the general fund and towards whatever purpose the board designed.
Oh, so it occurs at the time, not that happens when we allocate funds from ARPA.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. We could do all of it at once and then set that aside somewhere. You basically run it through the general fund and then send current year tax dollars to a separate location wherein you could, at that point, you no longer have the deadlines of obligating the funds by the end of 24 and having them spent by the 26 because they'll be spent this year. We can report back to the federal government, we're done.
So that sort of speaks to the allocation question. Franz?
Well, yeah, except that Liz said popcorn.
That's true. So,
yeah, okay, that's fine. I was thinking of it as something that's very sort of infrastructure related, but obviously that's not true.
Yeah. Liz, do you want to go back to?
I just have a general comment that, we've been asked to look at this list, but now we're only looking at the top 10 that the public have had input in. And that takes away our wisdom and experience.
So that's just the proposed process. So if you would like to speak to us not doing it that way, which is totally fine, right? What we're doing tonight is just moving forward with the next step on this process. So if you want us just to add all of them in, then speak to that. And if the board's agreeable, then we'll do it that way.
I don't have any specific requests for things that should be included.
Okay.
I just want an opportunity for the town staff and the select board to weigh in on something that, yes, the town really wanted to have input, and I'm glad that they have had input, but I don't want the town, the public input to be the sole criteria for going forward.
Yeah, yes, understood. And I think we're just on the next step of the input, which is trying to incorporate other really good ideas that we got from residents, or not even residents, just from people who were part of the survey. So
where are the pickleball courts?
they're in here.
They're there.
So starting on page 69,
Number 4.
Maybe a
On your
little
big sheet.
context on the pickleball court.
On your big
would be in
sheet,
order.
it's number 4 from the top.
Yeah, 4 or 6.
Yeah. So
So line 29 of the table is where the suggestions from the public came in, and so those run all down to the bottom of that page, all the next page, and down to number 79. So, now, some of these are not very clear responses that we got, and we'll probably have to refine them a bit before we put them in the next survey, or drop some, like, I think there's one that Patrick pointed out to me that just says downtown, and we don't really know what that is, so we probably wouldn't be able to include that in the survey, but.
Well, I just definitely think that maybe the town staff needs to take from 29 all the way down and make these comments real and filter them through a pragmatic lens, let's say. And then ask the select board what they think before it goes back out to the public.
Oh.
Throwing curveballs at me, Liz.
I want to say what my pragmatic
I didn't
lens
quite
is.
understand what, friends?
I want to say what my pragmatic lens is, that you were just asking, maybe for the staff to have a pragmatic lens, and I've definitely got one, which is I think we should be spending this money on things that we would be doing anyway.
Yeah.
I am very reluctant to take this opportunity and look at it as, well, let's do something fun and maybe even frivolous or desirable but not basic to town functioning, because we got problems just providing the infrastructure that this town needs. We've been identifying those needs for years as part of the capital plan. We've been deferring things again and again and again. And I think we have a responsibility to use this in a way that meets needs that we know we have and not really open it up for nice new things that we kind of can't afford.
What if it resolves problems that we know we have?
If it resolves problems that we know we have, then I'm in favor of it.
Yeah.
I just, I play a lot of tennis and I'm looking forward to an excellent pickleball career too. But I really have to, and it's, number 4 on the list. Everybody wants it. So, where do I get off saying no more pickleball? We've got enough. And, but that's where I'm landing at this point. I'm looking very much at, we've got needs that are well established and that this is an opportunity to meet those needs. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so I really want us to get, I don't really know, so do you not want us to put a survey back out? With the additional
No, it's
things?
not so much that, but when it comes down to actually making decisions, if there's all this infrastructure paving stuff, very unglamorous,
Okay, I
that
hear
isn't
that.
in the top
Okay.
10, that's still where I'm going to be
All right.
focusing.
So then what I'm hearing is let's not cut it if it didn't make the 10%. Let's keep it in and let's do the survey incorporating.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's not what he's
I'm
saying.
saying
It's
I'm
not
not
what
going
I'm
to pay as
saying.
much attention to the survey results as what I'm hearing, is the intention of this process.
And I'm saying something slightly different regarding 29 through 60, whatever.
72, yeah. 79.
I have a problem with having this list from the public be our starting point without having any sort of rigorous analysis of the wisdom and practicality of these.
Okay, well, I guess where I'm at then, board, is either, Franz, do you want to offer modification of the process as proposed by the town manager so that you would consider let me finish, so that you can consider the survey results that come in from this process continuing in a way that's helpful for ARPA consideration, given the board's commitment to an open, transparent process with community engagement on uses of ARPA funds? Are you proposing any modification to that?
No.
Okay. And do you, you don't want us to move forward with this until town staff?
Until town staff has given it a practical review for capital expenditures.
Okay, so that's Liz's thought on it. We need 2 head nods. Respectfully, I don't think it's necessary. So I don't think we need to do that. But if Franz and Peter like that idea, then we'll do that. And we will. But I'd like to move this item forward. Either way, whatever. Or
I'll make a suggestion.
Some alternative.
Maybe some compromise between those a bit, where we try to put some thought to what we think that was being suggested and describe it a little bit, and include the ones that we can do that for in the survey. And to Franz's point, we can bring back the survey results. That doesn't mean that you have to do what the responses are, that you're getting. It's just another factor for you to consider. I mean, if everybody says they really want pickleball courts, but you think that instead the funding should be spent on roads, then, that's a call that you'll make in December.
Right, exactly. And that's why I don't care so much about Liz's idea, because I don't care what the public thinks and I don't care what the town staff thinks either.
Wow.
So, I mean, excuse me, everybody out there, it's not really my position. What I'm saying is I'm going to exercise independent judgment.
Say it so loudly.
I'm going to exercise independent judgment on the choices that we have at the time.
So let me speak to why it may be helpful to do the proposed method from town staff. This survey and the information we gather from the public will be helpful moving forward beyond ARPA, right? ARPA is like a discussion. It's like basically, hey, like we have this money available. What are important priorities that you see in the town of Brattleboro? Like, that's what we're asking. Yeah. So we can use this information moving forward to help us, ground us in discussions about things. For example, when we're looking at FY25 budget and we're looking at those items that we were just discussing, if there's one that is sort of aligned with one of these survey results that is high on the list, that may help to inform making a priority there. So
I'll certainly look at the list. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to ignore it. And I may regret my strong statement of a few minutes ago. I will consider what people offer, but I'm saying that I think there's some really important things we need to do, and that's what I'm going to be focused on.
I don't think anybody disagrees on that. I also don't disagree that using like a 10% metric is a terrible idea. I think that
I don't have a problem with that either. What I do have a problem
we
with.
got 3 nods. Let's move on.
I know. I'm trying to get us there. I really am.
Is 29 to whatever, because it just needs to be cleaned up.
Okay, so I think
it needs to be cleaned up.
So maybe the solution is we do the 10% cut.
I think it's reasonable.
The survey goes out after I don't think a full an assessment of viability, right?
Yeah.
That's not, but maybe just so that that the items that are being presented to be voted on are, logical and make sense for, yeah? Okay.
For example, drop-in center for homeless. We already have that. Fire EMS equipment. We already have that.
Okay, so
funding of continuation of crisis team pop-ups.
I don't agree with removing something that seems duplicative, because that could be saying we want another one. Liz.
I'm listening.
Right? So drop-in center, what if that person's trying to say we want another one? That's the kind of right? I'm not advocating for that position, but it's that I think is you're doing too much editorializing.
Well, I just think that a little more screening of these for duplication or feasibility that can be quickly done by the town staff would be helpful.
Okay. Do you have two head nods on that? One, I don't see two.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. 'Cause
No.
I'm seeing a valid point to what you're both saying. I think that Liz is right. We have a drop-in center, but to your point, what if somebody else is saying we need a second one? So it's what's giving me my pause, because it's a valid point.
So I think in that case, let's just have it. Let's have it cleaned up, just in the sense that there are logical things. Let's not remove any that, right,
Okay.
or anything like that. Which means that we basically do exactly the policy that was identified in the memo. But
we want it all.
Great discussion. I'm going to look for just brief, if there's anybody who wants to speak on this right now. I don't see any hands. So we're going to move on to new business, agenda item 8. New F, which is going to be holidays parking.
Whoa.
So, John, you spoke to it briefly before, but if you want to just speak a little bit more to it.
This is a request from the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce for holidays, which is December 1st and December 2nd, to have parking be free on those 2 days. And we estimated, based on a rolling average, that it would be a cost in revenues of approximately $3,500 to do that. So.
And why is this before this? Like, did someone ask us for it?
Yes, the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce, who is represented here tonight by Greg Lesh, and he could perhaps speak to it if you would like.
Yeah, Greg, do you want to speak to it for a minute now that it's been pulled and we're having a discussion on it?
Sure. Greg Lesh, I'm the Executive Director of the Brattleboro Area Chamber. The Holidays promotion is in its 4th decade. It was designed originally to encourage folks to come downtown, spend some money, support the local businesses and the restaurants, and that's what we've been doing. That's what we continue to do. This is a critical time for the merchants when where they can make their money back. They've had the slumps during the year where the business is not so great. The holidays is a good time to encourage that. Also, because of all the issues with downtown and safety concerns and so forth, we want to encourage people to be downtown, because I think studies will show that where there is more activity, there's less crime. We want people to not be afraid to come downtown and this is not just a downtown promotion, but it is the natural hub, and that, of course, is where we have parking. So I think it's a good gesture toward the businesses to encourage them, and to the public to encourage them as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. Other members of the public wish to speak on it? Counterpoint.
First of all, it's the town that's going to be providing free parking. If the chamber was here with a $3,700 check, I would still be opposed to it. The reality is free parking doesn't help my business. I'm a member of the chamber. And I see what happens. I see what happens on every holiday when the town has free parking and we don't have signage and people go up and pay for parking. And that happened last year. That on holiday, when you approved this last year, 2 of you did, 2 of you weren't here. People went up and paid for parking. I feel like they're getting duped. My suggestion last year was it would do better in the state that we're in, that people from the chamber, Greg, a great representative, from their board, ask DBA to join in and walk around as ambassadors to be at the pay and display meter, rather than get harassed at the pay and display meter by people who are there panhandling, and you're going to go, hey, welcome to Brattleboro. We're from the Chamber of Commerce, and we want to pay for your parking today. We would get so much more out of that, and I can't understand why the chamber hasn't figured that out. To just go free parking and do nothing, that is absolutely terrible. Because what is going to happen is the people that live downtown and the local people, they're going to come down and they're going to take all those valued spots from a lot of the tourists that come into town that are looking for parking. And guess what? All the local people, all the people that live downtown are going to stay in the Harmony lot, or they're going to stay on Main Street, and they're going to take those valued parking places. If the chamber is on the street, and maybe the board, because you're paying for it, you know, this is the board should be the town of Brattleboro is paying for your parking today, not the chamber. And you have a fund that the parking fund ran a deficit last year. So you're going to give $3,700. Let's do it the right way. Let's have personal interaction. So I can be standing there and say, I'm going to pay for your parking. And that guy who's standing there with the sign is not going to harass you because I'm standing there. We got an image problem in Brattleboro, and just by going free parking that some people will benefit by that know about it, and the majority will not know about it and pay for parking, is not the right thing to do. And I would hope you would see that and say, you know what, Greg, even if you give the chamber the money, you write them a check and say, we're going to give you the money as long as you go out there with your ambassadors and pay for parking. I would support that.
Thank you, Dick. Is there, do I have the understanding that there is a different system for turning the meters off this year from last year?
My understanding, and there may be staff in the room that can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a way to make it say, no, you don't have to pay today, and we could program that in.
Yeah, I spoke to Carol Dunn and the parking and permits, and she said that there is a way to do that. She's very confident, so I also spoke with Howard Printing, who's doing the flyer for us, that we can create some posters that could go on the boxes.
Yeah.
That would alert people that, you know, thanks for coming down into Brattleboro, and you know, parking's on the town of Brattleboro.
Okay.
We're not going to take credit for it. It's, you know, I acknowledge that we're asking it from the town, and that's with gratitude.
Thank you. Franz?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that the board approve the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce request to suspend parking fees for the Holidays event downtown Friday, December 1st, and Saturday, December 2nd.
All right, there's a motion. Further discussion, board?
I think just to Dick's point, 110% agree. The idea is brilliant. It's non-executable. You've got one person that works at the chamber. You've got one person that works at the DBA. You've got 5 board members here that maybe would be willing to donate a few hours of their time. You just don't have the horsepower for the idea.
They have boards. They have boards that would be great for them to see what's actually happening on the street. So that's hollow to me. One person I wouldn't expect.
Oh, sorry, I was distracted. We're not going to get into back and forth.
No, it's not a back and forth. It's just a conversation, and
that's what a back and forth is.
But by definition of a back and forth, I consider this a conversation.
But I'm saying we're not going to do conversation. So if you want to finish your point, and
I think that
that's okay. No worries. It's late.
So I do agree with Dick that his execution is a grand idea, but I think that it is this opportunity to spread a little goodwill and good cheer into downtown Brattleboro. Are you correct? Probably some people will pay. I think that there's a better job of messaging that could go out around it that could maybe satisfy some of the concerns that Dick has laid out and get us to the end result.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Any other board? Liz?
I'd like to interrogate Greg for a minute, if I may.
Greg, should you wish to be interrogated by
Sure.
Select Board members?
Conversation.
Is there, I'm sure you've discussed this with your membership and the DBA membership. Is there a way for you to tell shop owners and so forth, don't hog the parking for yourself this day? Like, is that Is that a thing? Has that been discussed?
No, I don't, it hasn't. I mean, I don't know what everyone's parking situation is, if people bike into work or, yeah, no, we have not discussed that.
Well, that might be something that would be useful. And also, you know, I understand that you want to put signs on the machines.
Yeah.
But what about hoods that they use like for commercial loading and unloading? Can someone make little holiday hoods for the meters on Main Street?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I've been told that the meters should not take money if parking has been suspended.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we could make holiday hoods is a cute idea.
Plastic bags with holly on them.
Right. I mean, if that's something we could do, we'll do it. That's a lot of meters, but it might be something we could do.
I would just think that I would be happy to vote for this, but I think that it's a good idea for you to discuss with your membership to have cars move along.
Yeah, and I know that's often an issue, and that's often an issue on Main Street, people parking and feeding the meters, I'm sure.
Are you done with your interrogation?
Thank you.
That's great. Any further discussion? Seeing none, there's been a motion to approve the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce request to suspend parking fees for the holidays event downtown Friday, December 1st and Saturday, December 2nd. Board members, all those in favor, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's going to carry 4-0. Thank you very much for the discussion on it. We're going to move on to, and thank you, Greg, for your willingness to be interrogated there and for contributions from the public. We're going to move on to the last agenda item, which is new business. New business agenda item 8F, which is the committee appointments. So, board, we had some committee interviews today. Those were for contested seats, and there's some individuals who weren't able to be here, and we informed the people who did do their interviews that we're going to wait till the 7th after we've had an opportunity to interview the rest of them. So what I would request is that we just make a motion to approve as a slate all of those committee appointments on uncontested seats. Is there any objection to that?
Yeah.
In that case, I will make a motion to appoint all of the committee vacancies for seats that are unopposed for committees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 4-0. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to those who applied. And we really appreciate it. And we'll let the people know on the 7th after we've done the rest of the interviews for those contested committee appointments. And then in that case, I'm just looking for one more motion, board.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Peter has made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 4-0. Thank you very much to BCTV. Thank you very much to Patrick for running the Zoom. Thank you so much to our interpreters. I think I got us done at exactly 10 p.m. So I know you had to go. Yes, thumbs up. Thank you, Patrick and John.
Yep.